What if everything you've been taught about success is not just incomplete, but dangerously wrong? What if being honest, being loyal, being the hardest worker in the room is actually the fastest way to lose everything? For over 3,000 years, the most powerful people in history have followed a hidden set of rules that most of us never learn. This is the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, and today in part 1, we're breaking down the first 12 laws that will change the way you see the world forever. The 48 Laws of Power. Part 1. Laws 1 through 12. Robert Greene spent years studying the most cunning, brilliant, and ruthless figures in human history. Kings and con artists, generals and seducers, philosophers and spies. And he noticed something remarkable. Whether it was ancient China or Renaissance Italy, whether it was the court of Louis XIV or the boardrooms of modern-day Wall Street, the same patterns kept appearing, the same strategies, the same traps. He distilled all of this into 48 laws. And here's the thing that makes people uncomfortable about this book. Greene doesn't judge. He doesn't tell you that power is good or evil. He simply says it exists, like gravity. You can understand it and use it, or you can ignore it and get crushed by it. Now, you might be thinking, I'm not some power-hungry dictator. Why do I need to know this? And that's exactly the point. Because whether you're navigating office politics, managing friendships, building a business, or just trying to stop people from walking all over you, these laws are operating on your life right now, whether you're aware of them or not. In the next 46 minutes, I'm going to walk you through the first 12 laws of power. These are the foundation, the bedrock, the rules that govern how you protect yourself, build your reputation, and start to see the invisible chess game happening all around you. Some of what you hear today will make you nod in agreement. Some of it will make you deeply uncomfortable. And some of it will make you think of someone in your life who's been using these laws against you this entire time. Let's get started. Law 1. Never outshine the master. Let me tell you about a man who threw the greatest party in the history of France and lost everything because of it. It was the year 1661. Nicolas Fouquet was the finance minister to the young King Louis XIV. Fouquet was wealthy, charming, and deeply connected to the most brilliant minds in Europe. He was also in trouble. He sensed that he was falling out of favor with the king, and he needed to do something dramatic to win back Louis's affection. So he devised a plan. He would throw a party so spectacular, so impossibly lavish, that the king would see just how talented and devoted his finance minister truly was. And what a party it was! The finest nobility of Europe attended. Molière himself wrote and performed a play for the evening. A 7-course dinner featured delicacies from the Orient that had never been tasted in France before. Fireworks lit up the sky. The gardens of Fouquet's estate were so breathtaking that they would later inspire the design of Versailles itself. The party was a masterpiece. It was also the last night of freedom Nicolas Fouquet would ever know. The very next day, Fouquet was arrested. He was charged with stealing from the royal treasury, charges that were largely fabricated. He was found guilty and sentenced to imprisonment in the most isolated fortress in France, high in the Pyrenees Mountains. He spent the last 20 years of his life in solitary confinement. He never saw his family again. So what went wrong? Think about it. Fouquet believed he was demonstrating his loyalty, his devotion, his good taste. But that is not what Louis saw. What Louis saw, with every new spectacle, with every gasp of admiration from the guests, was that his own subjects were more charmed by the finance minister than by their king. He saw a man flaunting wealth and connections that made the monarch himself look small. Each course of that magnificent dinner was another nail in Fouquet's coffin. Make those above you feel comfortably superior, and you will rise to the heights of power. Here's the truth. Everyone above you, your boss, your mentor, your leader, they all have insecurities. They want to feel secure in their position, superior in intelligence, unmatched in charm. And when you display your talents too boldly, you don't inspire their admiration, you inspire their fear. This is Law 1. Never outshine the master. Now, does this mean you should hide your abilities forever? Absolutely not. It means you need to be strategic about how and when you reveal them. Consider the opposite approach. Around the same time as Fouquet's downfall, the great astronomer Galileo made a discovery that would change science forever. He found the moons of Jupiter, and he had a choice. He could spread the glory around, dedicate the discovery to multiple patrons as he'd done in the past, or he could do something brilliant. Galileo chose to dedicate the discovery exclusively to the Medici family. Why? Because Jupiter was already the Medici symbol, and the number of moons, 4, matched the number of suns in the dynasty. Galileo wove a story in which the heavens themselves reflected the greatness of the Medici name. He didn't outshine his master, he made his master outshine everyone else, and for that he was rewarded with a lifetime appointment, a full salary, and the freedom to pursue his research without ever begging for patronage again. That is the difference between Fouquet and Galileo. One man used his talents to make himself look brilliant. The other used his talents to make his master look like a god. Ask yourself, in your own life, are you a Fouquet or a Galileo? Law 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. This next law is one of the hardest to accept because it goes against everything we've been taught about loyalty and friendship. But let me tell you what happened to an emperor who trusted his best friend with everything. In 9th century Byzantium, a young emperor named Michael III inherited a throne surrounded by enemies. Assassins, schemers, power-hungry nobles, threats came from every direction. He needed someone he could trust completely, someone loyal, someone who owed him everything. And his thoughts turned to his best friend, a man named Basilius. Now, Basilius was not a politician, he was the head of the royal stables, a former peasant from Macedonia who Michael had rescued from obscurity years earlier after the young groom saved his life from a wild horse. Michael had showered Basilius with gifts, sent him to the finest schools, transformed him from a crude stable hand into a sophisticated courtier. Who better to trust than a man who owed you everything? So Michael made Basilius his chief counselor, his most intimate advisor. And for a while, things seemed fine. But slowly, Basilius began to change. Exposure to wealth and power awakened a hunger in him that Michael never anticipated. He demanded more money. He grew arrogant. He convinced Michael to execute his own uncle on trumped-up charges of treason, clearing the path for Basilius to take control of the army. And then one night, after Michael had been drinking heavily, he woke to find himself surrounded by soldiers. Basilius watched as they stabbed the emperor to death. Then he proclaimed himself emperor and rode through the streets of Byzantium with his former best friend's severed head mounted on a pike. Let that sink in. The man who owed Michael everything became the man who took everything from him. Now, why does this happen? Why do friends so often betray us? Here's the uncomfortable truth. When you do a friend a favor, when you elevate them, give them a position, hand them an opportunity, something strange happens inside their mind. At first, they feel grateful, but over time, that gratitude becomes a burden. It reminds them that they didn't earn their position on their own merit, that they were chosen because of friendship, not because they were the best person for the job. And that feeling of indebtedness slowly curdles into resentment. Friends also hide their true feelings from you. They laugh too hard at your jokes. They agree with you to avoid conflict. They conceal their envy behind a mask of support, and because you trust them, you never see the danger until it's too late. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Greene argues that your enemies, the people you've defeated, the rivals you've clashed with, can actually be more useful than your friends. In ancient China, Emperor Sung faced the same problem every ruler faced, the threat of being overthrown by his own generals. But instead of executing them as every previous emperor had done, he made them an offer they couldn't refuse: retire, take vast estates, beautiful homes, and live in luxury for the rest of your lives. The generals, expecting death, were stunned by this generosity. They accepted immediately, and Sung went even further. When he defeated enemy kings who had fought against him, he treated them with such unexpected kindness that they became his most loyal allies. A man who has been spared when he expected the worst is the most grateful man alive. He'll move mountains for the person who pardoned him. An enemy you convert has more to prove than a friend who takes you for granted. Keep friends for friendship, but work with the skilled and competent. The takeaway here isn't to abandon your friends or become paranoid. It's simpler than that. Don't let personal feelings cloud your judgment when it comes to power. Choose your allies based on skill, not sentiment, and never assume that because someone loves you, they won't one day betray you. Law 3. Conceal your intentions. Let's get brutally honest for a moment. How many of us walk around wearing our hearts on our sleeves, telling people exactly what we think, what we feel, what we plan to do next? We call it authenticity. We call it being real. Robert Greene calls it the fastest way to lose your power. This law has 2 parts, and both are essential. The first is about throwing people off your scent with decoys and red herrings. The second is about using smokescreens to disguise your real moves. In 17th century France, a legendary courtesan named Ninon de Lenclos took a young nobleman named the Marquis de Sévigné under her wing. The Marquis was hopelessly in love with a beautiful countess but had no idea how to win her heart. Ninon, who was in her 60s and had seduced some of the greatest men in Europe, decided to teach him the art of strategic concealment. First, she told him to approach the countess with cool indifference, not as a lover, but as a friend. This would throw the woman off the scent. She would no longer take his interest for granted. Next, Ninon arranged for the Marquis to appear at social events surrounded by stunning young women. This would make the countess jealous, and when a woman sees that other women desire a man, his value skyrockets in her eyes. Then the Marquis would become unpredictable, showing up at places where the countess didn't expect him, disappearing from places where she did. Week by week, the plan worked perfectly. The countess began to obsess over the Marquis. She started asking questions about him. She began seeking him out. Ninon could see through her network of spies that the woman was falling deeply under his spell. And then, the Marquis ruined everything. One evening, alone with the countess, overcome by emotion, he grabbed her hands and told her he was in love with her. The spell shattered instantly. The countess grew cold. She avoided him. The door closed forever. Why? Because the moment he revealed his intentions, all the mystery vanished. Everything he had done, the indifference, the other women, the appearing and disappearing, suddenly looked like a calculated scheme rather than the natural actions of a fascinating man. She felt manipulated instead of enchanted. Think about it. In seduction, in business, in any kind of negotiation, the moment people know exactly what you want, they can build defenses against it. They can prepare. They can use your desire as leverage. But when they can't figure you out, they can't prepare for anything. They're off balance, and you hold all the cards. The second part of this law is about smokescreens, and nobody demonstrated this better than a young Prussian politician named Otto von Bismarck. In 1850, the Prussian parliament was debating whether to go to war with Austria. Bismarck was known as a fierce patriot who dreamed of German unification through military might. Everyone expected him to bang the war drum louder than anyone. Instead, he stood before Parliament and delivered an impassioned speech against the war. He praised Austria. He warned of the devastation that would come from conflict. He spoke of weeping fathers and crippled soldiers. The entire country was fooled. The king, grateful for this unexpected voice of peace, made Bismarck a cabinet minister. And from that position of power, years later, Bismarck led Prussia into war with Austria, crushed them in 7 weeks, and unified Germany under Prussian rule, exactly as he had planned all along. His speech against war was a masterpiece of concealment. By appearing to support the opposite of what he truly believed, he threw everyone off the scent and positioned himself perfectly for the future. Conceal your purpose not by closing up, but by talking endlessly about goals that aren't your real ones. The lesson is powerful. Don't close up and seem secretive. That raises suspicion. Instead, be open, be friendly. Talk about your plans and goals freely, just make sure they're the wrong ones. Flood people with false signals, and they'll never see your real moves coming. Law 4. Always say less than necessary. Here's a question that might sting a little. Have you ever talked yourself out of a promotion, out of a deal, out of a relationship? Most of us have. Because the tongue is almost impossible to tame. It fights constantly to break free, and when it does, it causes destruction we never intended. The ancient Roman general Coriolanus was a living legend. 17 years of battlefield glory, dozens of scars earned in defense of Rome. When he decided to enter politics and run for consul, the people were initially moved to tears just by seeing the marks of his valor on his body. His election seemed guaranteed. But then Coriolanus started talking. He bragged about his exploits. He insulted the common people. He made jokes that only the aristocrats found funny. He talked and talked and talked. And the more he said, the smaller he appeared. The legendary warrior suddenly looked like a common braggart. The people who had wept at his scars now turned against him. He lost the election, but he still wouldn't stop talking. He went on to publicly condemn democracy itself, demanded food be withheld from the hungry, and eventually was sentenced to death. All of those scars, all of that valor, all of that potential, destroyed by an inability to stop speaking. Now compare that to Louis XIV. As a young man, Louis loved to talk. He was witty, eloquent, proud of his own words. But at some point he realized something profound. The less he said, the more powerful he appeared. He developed a trademark response to almost every request, every debate, every pressing question of state. His ministers would spend days preparing their arguments, rehearsing their presentations, plotting exactly how to approach the king. They would finally stand before him, make their case passionately, and Louis would look at them, give nothing away, and say 3 words, "I shall see." Then he would walk away. That's it. No explanation, no counter-argument, no debate, just silence and 3 devastating words. His ministers would go home and obsess over what he meant. They would replay every moment, searching for clues in his expression. The silence drove them into a frenzy of speculation, and in their anxiety they would reveal their own plans, their own weaknesses, their own hidden motives. Louis had discovered the ultimate weapon: silence. What? Those with real authority command respect through silence, not speeches. This applies far beyond the court of a king. In any negotiation, any meeting, any conversation where power is at stake, the person who talks the most is usually the person with the least control. By saying less, you appear more profound, more confident, more in command, and the less you reveal, the less ammunition you give to those who would use your words against you. Law 5. So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life. Let me ask you something. If the same exact action, let's say riding in a king's carriage without permission, can earn you praise one day and get your feet cut off the next, what's the difference? Reputation, that's the difference. In the ancient Chinese court of Wei, there was a man named Mitsu Sha who had built a reputation for supreme grace and civility. He became the ruler's favorite. One day, when his mother fell ill, he secretly used the royal carriage to visit her, a crime normally punished by amputation. But when the ruler found out, he was touched. "How dutiful," he said. For his mother's sake, he forgot the consequences. Another time, Mitsu Sha was eating a delicious peach and offered the half-eaten fruit to the ruler, who was delighted by the gesture. "You love me so much you'd share your own food." But years later, when rival courtiers managed to damage Mitsu Sha's reputation, the same ruler looked at those same actions through completely different eyes. "This man once had the nerve to use my carriage without permission, and he even dared to give me a half-eaten peach." The exact same deeds, the exact same man, the exact same ruler. But with a different reputation, everything changed. This is why Greene says reputation is the cornerstone of power. It precedes you everywhere. It can double your strength without you lifting a finger, or it can destroy you before you even enter the room. During China's War of the Three Kingdoms, the brilliant strategist Zhuge Liang found himself in an impossible situation. His army of just 100 soldiers was about to be overrun by a force of over 150,000 enemy troops. There was no escape, no reinforcements, no hope. But Zhuge Liang had something more powerful than an army. He had his reputation. He ordered his men to hide. He threw open the city gates. Then he climbed to the top of the city wall, put on a flowing Taoist robe, lit some incense, and started playing his lute. Just sitting there, calm as a summer morning. When the enemy general, Sima Yi, arrived with his massive force and saw this scene, the open gates, the empty streets, the legendary strategist sitting peacefully on the wall, he was paralyzed. He had fought Zhuge Liang dozens of times and knew the man's genius for setting traps. This had to be a trap. It was too obvious. Sima Yi ordered an immediate retreat. 150,000 soldiers turned away by one man playing a lute. That is the power of reputation. Build a reputation so strong that no attack can crack it, and see the attacks coming before they land. Build your reputation early. Base it on one outstanding quality that sets you apart. Protect it fiercely, and understand that while it takes years to build, it can be destroyed in a single careless moment. Law 6. Court attention at all cost. Now let's talk about something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Attention. We're taught that seeking attention is vain, shallow, beneath us. But in the world of power, Greene argues the opposite. If nobody sees it, it might as well not exist. No one understood this better than P.T. Barnum, the greatest showman in American history. Early in his career, Barnum pulled off one of the most brilliantly absurd marketing stunts ever devised. He hired a beggar off the street, gave him 5 bricks, and told him to walk a slow circuit through several blocks of New York City. At certain points, the man was to lay a brick on the sidewalk. On the return trip, he would pick up each brick and replace it with the one in his hand. He was to remain completely silent and answer no questions. Within an hour, hundreds of people were following this man, debating furiously about what he was doing. By the 4th circuit, a full crowd had gathered, and every time the brick man entered Barnum's museum, the American Museum, dozens of onlookers bought tickets to follow him inside. By the end of the first day, over 1,000 new visitors had paid admission. Barnum had discovered a fundamental truth. People are magnetically drawn to the unusual and the inexplicable. Create curiosity, and crowds will form. Create a crowd, and money follows. But attention isn't just about spectacle. There's a subtler, more lasting form of it, and that's mystery. Have you ever met someone you simply couldn't figure out? Someone who fascinated you precisely because you didn't understand them? Think about a young woman named Margaretha Zella, who arrived in Paris in 1904 with nothing, half a franc in her pocket. She was one of thousands of beautiful young girls who flooded the city every year, hoping to make it as performers. Most would be forgotten within a season. But Margaretha understood something the others didn't. Beauty wasn't enough. Talent wasn't enough. What set you apart was the ability to create an air of mystery so thick that people couldn't stop trying to figure you out. She reinvented herself as Mata Hari, a dancer from the exotic East who performed sacred rituals from Hindu mythology. Her backstory changed every time she told it. She was from Java. No, India. No, Sumatra. She grew up in temples. She learned dance from priestesses. She could shoot, ride horses, and discuss philosophy. None of it was true. She was a Dutch girl from a small province in Holland, but the mystery was so intoxicating that all of Paris fell under her spell. The most powerful men in Europe competed for her attention. She amassed a fortune. What separated Mata Hari from 1,000 other pretty girls? Not her face, not her dancing. It was the fact that no one could ever quite figure her out. And what you can never quite pin down is what you can never get tired of. What you can never get tired of never loses its power. Make yourself impossible to ignore. Draw every eye in the room to you. Now, a crucial warning here. There's a fine line between commanding attention and being desperate for it. One makes you powerful, the other makes you pathetic. The key is to make your attention-seeking look effortless. Never appear hungry for the spotlight. Let it seem as though the spotlight simply cannot stay away from you. We're halfway through the first 12 laws, and already you can see a pattern forming. Power isn't about brute force. It's about perception. It's about controlling what people see, what they believe, and what they feel. Let's keep going. Law 7. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. Now, this law might sound ruthless. It might even sound unfair. But before you judge it, let me tell you the story of two men who changed the world, and how one of them died in poverty while the other's name lives on forever. Nikola Tesla was, by any measure, one of the greatest scientific minds in human history. He invented the alternating current electrical system that powers your home right now. He pioneered radio technology. He designed motors and generators that transformed civilization, and he died alone, impoverished, in a tiny New York hotel room. His rival, Thomas Edison, was not nearly as brilliant an inventor. Edison himself once said he had no need to be a mathematician because he could always hire one, and that was Edison's real genius. Not invention, but organization. He hired the best minds in the field to do the work, then put his name on the results. When Tesla, as a young engineer working in Edison's company, redesigned Edison's primitive generators, a task that took a year of 18-hour days, Edison refused to pay him the $50,000 he had promised. "You don't understand our American humor," he said. "Now here's where it gets painful." Tesla, out of stubborn pride, insisted on doing everything himself. He refused patronage. He refused partnerships. He wanted the world to know that every discovery came from his mind alone. And the world didn't care. His patents were stolen. His name was lost in the shuffle. His inventions were credited to others. Meanwhile, Edison, who had the far inferior intellect but the far superior understanding of power, went down in history as one of America's greatest inventors. Think about it. The credit for a creation is as important as the creation itself. Maybe more important. Because credit is what brings fame, and fame is what attracts money, resources, and future opportunities. Why exhaust yourself on work that someone else can handle, and handle well? This isn't just about exploitation. It's about efficiency. Time is your most precious resource. If you try to do everything alone, out of pride, out of a desire to prove yourself, you will exhaust yourself and run out of time. The great painter Peter Paul Rubens ran a massive studio with dozens of specialists. One painter did robes, another did backgrounds. When an important client visited, Rubens would shoo the assistants away and work at an incredible pace, creating the illusion of singular genius. The client left in awe. The art world considered Rubens a marvel, and his operation kept running like a well-oiled machine. Use the work of others to further your cause. Build on what came before. And above all, secure the credit for what matters most. Law 8. Make other people come to you. Use bait if necessary. Here's a truth about power that most people get backwards. We think power comes from being aggressive, from chasing, from forcing our way forward. But the truly powerful do the opposite. They make others come to them. Consider one of the most cunning maneuvers in political history. After Napoleon's first defeat in 1814, the European powers exiled him to the island of Elba, off the Italian coast. The continent breathed a sigh of relief, but Napoleon's former foreign minister, Talleyrand, was not satisfied. He knew that as long as Napoleon lived, even on an island, he was a threat. Talleyrand had tried to convince the other leaders to send Napoleon farther away. No one listened. So Talleyrand hatched a plan so audacious, so deeply layered, that even Napoleon himself never saw it coming. Working behind the scenes, Talleyrand arranged for visitors to whisper in Napoleon's ear about how much France still loved him. He made sure that English surveillance of the island was relaxed. He essentially created a golden corridor of escape. Napoleon took the bait. He escaped Elba, sailed back to France, and marched on Paris with a tiny army. The French rallied to him. The king fled. Napoleon was emperor again, for exactly 100 days, which is precisely how long Talleyrand needed. He knew that France, bankrupted and exhausted, could not sustain a new war. He knew Napoleon's ambition would push him into battle, and at Waterloo, Napoleon met his final defeat. He was exiled to the barren island of St. Helena, in the middle of the Atlantic, where he would die. Talleyrand never fired a shot, he never raised an army. He simply dangled irresistible bait, glory, the love of the masses, the return of power, and let Napoleon's own nature destroy him. The person who makes others move first is the person running the game. The essence of this law is simple but profound. When you chase, you lose the initiative. You exhaust yourself. You play on someone else's turf, under their conditions. But when you make others come to you, they're the ones burning energy, making mistakes, falling into traps they didn't see. Master your emotions. Never react impulsively. And always be the one holding the bait, not chasing it. Law 9, win through your actions, never through argument. How many arguments have you won that actually changed someone's mind? Think about it honestly. Probably not many. Because here's the uncomfortable reality about human nature. Even when you win an argument, you lose. The resentment you create lasts far longer than any momentary agreement. In 1502, a massive block of marble sat gathering dust in a Florence church. A previous sculptor had butchered it, boring a hole through where the figure's legs should have been. Everyone considered it ruined, but when Michelangelo examined it, he saw potential. He believed he could carve something magnificent by adapting the pose to accommodate the damage. The city's mayor, Soderini, was skeptical but agreed to let him try. And what Michelangelo created was one of the most famous sculptures in human history, David. But when Soderini came to inspect the nearly finished masterpiece, he announced his verdict. The nose, he declared, was too big. Now, Michelangelo knew the nose was perfect. He also knew that Soderini was standing in a spot directly beneath the giant figure, which distorted his perspective. The artist could have explained this. He could have argued. He could have lectured the mayor on proportion and perspective. Instead, he did something brilliant. Without a word, he gestured for Soderini to follow him up the scaffolding. He picked up his chisel in one hand and a handful of marble dust in the other. Then, with Soderini watching from just a few feet below, Michelangelo began tapping lightly at the nose, letting the hidden dust fall bit by bit, creating the convincing illusion that he was shaping the stone. After a few minutes, he stepped aside. "Look at it now," Soderini beamed. "I like it better. You've made it come alive." Michelangelo never changed a thing. Not a single chip was taken from that perfect nose. But he won, completely, elegantly, without a single word of argument. Show people the truth through action. Let them see it, not hear it. Actions speak a language that bypasses all resistance. No one can argue with a demonstrated proof. No one can resent a solution they believe was their own idea. Remember this the next time you feel the urge to convince someone through words. Stop talking. Start showing. Law 10. Infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. This next law is going to sound cold. It might even sound cruel. But bear with me, because it could save your life. Emotional states are as infectious as diseases. You can catch misery from another person just as easily as you can catch a cold. And the truly dangerous carriers are not the ones going through temporary hardship. We all face that. The dangerous ones are the people who draw misfortune to themselves again and again and again through their own destructive patterns. In the 1840s, a woman named Lola Montez arrived in Paris, reinventing herself as a Spanish flamenco dancer. She was fiery, seductive, and utterly unstable. And she left a trail of destruction wherever she went. Her first important lover was a French newspaper owner named Courtier. Being close to Lola drew him into quarrels he would never have had otherwise. Within a year, he was dead, shot in a duel that was sparked by Lola's reputation. Next, she set her sights on King Ludwig of Bavaria. She seduced him completely. He gave her a palace, a title, political influence, but Lola's instability couldn't be contained. She whipped strangers in the street. She attacked passers-by with her dog's leash. Her meddling in politics sparked riots across the kingdom. By 1848, Ludwig was forced to abdicate his throne. A king who had been loved by his people, ruined by his association with one woman. Do you see the pattern forming? It wasn't bad luck. It was something far more dangerous. Lola moved to England, married a young army officer who lost his career, was ostracized from society, and died in poverty within a few years. She moved to California, married again. That husband also drank himself to death. Her publisher went bankrupt. It wasn't misfortune that followed Lola Montez. It was Lola Montez that was the misfortune. She carried destruction inside her like a virus, and anyone who got close enough was infected. Surround yourself with those who radiate success and optimism. Now here's the flip side of this law, and it's just as powerful. If misery is contagious, so is success, so is joy, so is brilliance. Napoleon himself was deeply influenced by Talleyrand's aristocratic charm and sophistication, qualities Napoleon lacked but desperately wanted. By keeping Talleyrand close, Napoleon absorbed those qualities over time. The people you surround yourself with will shape who you become. This is not a theory, it's an observable law of human nature. So choose carefully. When you recognize the signs of a chronic infector, the turbulent past, the trail of broken relationships, the victim mentality that never quite adds up, do not try to rescue them. Do not try to fix them. Walk away. Your own survival depends on it. Law 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. There's a common belief, especially in our culture, that the ultimate goal is total independence, to need nobody, to stand completely on your own. Greene says that's a fantasy, and a dangerous one. Power is not independence. Power is making yourself so essential that others cannot function without you. The completely independent person might have freedom, but freedom without influence is just isolation. In the 1840s, a young unknown politician named Otto von Bismarck surveyed the political landscape of Prussia and made a counterintuitive choice. While other ambitious men attached themselves to the strongest faction, the liberals, the conservatives, the military, Bismarck chose none of them. Instead, he attached himself to the weakest person in the room. The king, Frederick William IV, was spineless and indecisive, a man ridiculed by his own parliament. But Bismarck saw something everyone else missed. A weak master is the best kind of master, because he needs you most. Bismarck became Frederick's backbone. He stood by the king when everyone else attacked him. He urged him to be firm when every instinct told the king to cave. He made himself the iron in a man who was pure jelly, and gradually he restored the king's power, with himself pulling every string behind the scenes. When Frederick died and his brother William took the throne, William despised Bismarck and wanted to fire him. But he inherited the same desperate situation. Enemies everywhere, a parliament trying to clip his wings, a kingdom on the verge of chaos, and the only man who could hold it all together was Bismarck. Every time Bismarck threatened to resign, the king gave in, because getting rid of Bismarck meant the whole edifice would collapse. For over 20 years, Bismarck essentially ran Germany while technically serving a master. He had all the benefits of power without the burden of the crown. When others rely on you for their success and well-being, your position becomes unshakable. The lesson is clear. Don't strive for independence. Strive for indispensability. Make yourself the person that others simply cannot do without, whether through a unique skill, a vast network of connections, or the sheer force of your competence. Become the one irreplaceable piece in the machine. Because the moment you can be replaced, you will be. Law 12. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. We've arrived at the final law in part 1, and it might be the most devilishly clever of them all. We all build walls around ourselves, emotional defenses, a healthy skepticism towards strangers, a weariness of anyone who wants something from us. These walls are strong. They've been reinforced over years of experience, and trying to batter through them with force, charm, or persuasion usually fails. But there is one thing that can slip through every defense. One gesture so disarming that even the most suspicious mind cannot resist it. and that is an unexpected act of honesty or generosity. In the 1920s, a dapper man with a continental accent walked into Al Capone's office. His name was Count Victor Lustig, one of the most legendary con artists in modern history. Lustig told the most dangerous gangster in America that he could double $50,000 through a secret investment scheme. Now, Capone was no fool. He didn't survive Chicago's underworld by trusting strangers, but something about Lustig's refinement and confidence intrigued him. He handed over the $50,000. 2 months later, Lustig returned. He looked apologetic, almost ashamed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Capone," he said. "The plan failed. I couldn't make it work." Then he reached into his coat, pulled out the full $50,000, and placed it on the desk. Every single dollar. Capone was stunned. He had expected either $100,000 back or nothing. To have the money returned, honestly, completely, with genuine remorse, was the last thing he anticipated. "My God," Capone said. "You're honest." He was so disarmed by this unexpected integrity that he pulled $5,000 from the stack and handed it to Lustig. "Here, if you're on the spot, this will help you along." That $5,000 was exactly what Lustig had been after all along. He had never intended to invest the money. He put it in a bank box for 2 months and did nothing. The entire performance, the borrowing, the waiting, the heartfelt apology, the full return, was designed to do one thing: lower Capone's defenses through an act of apparent honesty. A single moment of unexpected honesty can erase the memory of a dozen deceptions. This is the genius of selective honesty. A single act that seems genuinely heartfelt will blind people to dozens of moves that are anything but honest. It works because we desperately want to believe that other people are good, that their kindness is real, that their honesty reflects their character. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and con people, but understand this principle. Understand that generosity, especially unexpected generosity, is one of the most powerful tools in the game of power. The ancient Chinese called it offering a gift before making a request. The giving softens the ground. It makes the taking invisible. And beware of those who use this technique on you. When someone's honesty seems too good to be true, it probably is. Key takeaways, laws 1 through 12. All right, let's take a breath here. We've covered 12 laws, and if I had to distill them into the core lessons that will serve you immediately, here's what I'd tell you. First, the game is real. Whether you like it or not, power dynamics are operating in every area of your life. At work, in your relationships, in your social circle. You don't have to become a manipulator, but you absolutely must become aware, because the people who don't see the game are the people who get played. Second, protect your reputation like your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. Your reputation is the single most powerful asset you possess. It precedes you into every room, every meeting, every new relationship. Build it deliberately, based on one outstanding quality, and guard it ferociously against anyone who would tear it down. Third, master the art of concealment. Not deception for its own sake, but strategic concealment. Don't wear your heart on your sleeve. Don't reveal your plans before they're ready. Don't give people the ammunition to defend against your next move. The less people know about what you're truly after, the more power you hold. Fourth, talk less. This one seems simple, but it might be the hardest to practice. We are wired to explain ourselves, to justify our actions, to fill silences. Resist that urge. In every important interaction, ask yourself, can I say this with fewer words or with no words at all? You will be amazed at how much more powerful you become. Fifth, choose your associations with ruthless care. The people around you are either lifting you up or pulling you down. There's almost no middle ground. Seek out the brilliant, the fortunate, the driven, the optimistic, and when you recognize the signs of a chronic infector, someone whose life is a revolving door of drama and disaster, do not let compassion blind you to the danger they represent. Sixth, make yourself indispensable. In a world where everyone can be replaced, the greatest security you can build is being the one person who can't be. Develop a unique skill. Make yourself the center of critical operations. Weave yourself so deeply into the fabric of your organization or your relationships that removing you would cause everything to unravel. And seventh, use generosity as a strategic weapon. Not random acts of kindness scattered without purpose, but deliberate, well-timed gestures that lower people's defenses and create bonds of obligation. Give before you take. Be unexpectedly honest when everyone expects calculation, and watch how doors that were locked swing open before you. These 12 laws are just the beginning. They lay the groundwork for everything that follows. In part 2, we'll dive into the art of social strategy, persuasion, timing, independence, and the delicate games of playing people against one another without getting caught. Closing. Before I let you go, I want to leave you with one thought. Robert Greene wrote this book not for tyrants or manipulators. He wrote it for people like you and me. People who are tired of being caught off guard, tired of being outmaneuvered by those who understand the rules of a game we were never taught. Knowledge of these laws doesn't make you a bad person, it makes you a prepared one. And in a world full of people who would happily use these principles against you, being prepared isn't just smart, it's necessary. Now here's my question for you. Of these first 12 laws, which one hit you the hardest? Which one made you think of someone in your own life, a boss, a friend, a rival, who's been playing this game without you even knowing it? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. If you want to read the full book, I've put links to get it on Amazon and listen free on Audible in the description below. And if you want to hear laws 13 through 24, where the strategies get even more sophisticated and the stakes get even higher, make sure you subscribe. I publish new book summaries every week. Remember, you don't have to play dirty to play smart, but you do have to play. I'll see you in part 2. By the end of this video, you will understand something that 99% of people never figure out. Why the most powerful people in history never asked for anything directly, never fought when they were outmatched, and never committed to anyone. These 12 laws, laws 13 through 24 of the 48 laws of power, are the social operating system that separates the players from the pawns, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Welcome back. If you caught part 1 of this series, you already know what Robert Greene is about. He is not here to preach morality. He is here to show you how the world actually works, the unspoken rules that govern every office, every relationship, every negotiation. In part 1, we covered laws 1 through 12, the foundations. We talked about never outshining your master, guarding your reputation, saying less than necessary, and using selective honesty as a weapon. Those laws were about survival, about protecting yourself in a world where power games are happening whether you play them or not. Now, in part 2, we go deeper. Laws 13 through 24 are about something more sophisticated, the art of social strategy. These are the laws that teach you how to read people, how to persuade without arguing, how to move through social circles like a master chess player. We are going to learn why the most powerful people never remind anyone of past favors, why the best spies do not sneak around in the shadows but smile and ask polite questions at dinner parties, why the smartest move is sometimes to surrender, and why the person who refuses to pick a side often ends up more powerful than anyone who did. So settle in. Over the next 41 minutes, we are going to walk through every one of these 12 laws, packed with stories from history, con artists and queens, emperors and courtesans that will change the way you see the world around you. Let us begin. Here is one of the most painful truths in this entire book, and it comes right at the start of part 2. Law 13. When asking for help, appeal to self-interest, never to mercy or gratitude. When you need help, when you truly desperately need someone to come through for you, your first instinct is to remind them of everything you have done. All the favors, all the late nights, all the times you showed up when nobody else did. And it makes sense, right? Gratitude should count for something. But Greene says that instinct will betray you almost every single time. Why? Because gratitude is a burden. Think about it. When someone reminds you of what they did for you, how does it really make you feel? Grateful or guilty? There is a difference, And guilt is one of the most corrosive emotions in human relationships. The person you are reminding does not feel warmth toward you. They feel the weight of an unpaid debt. And what do people do with debts they do not want to carry? They find a way to forget them. They rationalize. They convince themselves you were not really that helpful. Or they simply avoid you. Greene illustrates this with a devastating story from 14th century Italy. Castruccio Castracani had risen from common soldier to lord of the powerful city of Lucca. He owed much of his ascent to one noble family, the Poggios. They had supported him, conspired with him, helped him seize control. But once in power, Castruccio's ambition outgrew his gratitude. He moved on, forgot the favors. When things got dangerous, when a rebellion brewed while Castruccio was away fighting, the eldest Poggio, Stefano, stepped in and brokered peace. He calmed both sides, prevented bloodshed. Then he went to Castruccio, expecting recognition for this service. He laid out the family's entire history of loyalty. He reminded the warlord of every good deed. He appealed to mercy, to justice, to basic human decency. Castruccio listened patiently. Then he smiled, promised that justice would prevail, and invited the entire Poggio family to the palace to discuss their grievances. That evening, every single one of them was imprisoned. Days later, they were all executed, including the good, peaceful, well-meaning Stefano. Now, was Castruccio a monster? Probably. But that is not Greene's point. The point is that Stefano made a catastrophic miscalculation. He assumed that reminding a powerful man of past debts would activate his sense of honor. Instead, it activated something very different: resentment. The more Stefano talked about what he was owed, the more Castruccio saw him as a living reminder of obligation. And powerful people do not like to feel obligated. So what should you do instead? Greene's answer is brutally simple. Appeal to self-interest. When you need something from someone, do not remind them of the past. Show them the future. Find something in your request that benefits them and emphasize it. Make them see how helping you also helps them. When a person sees a clear gain for themselves, they respond with enthusiasm rather than guilt. Greene contrasts the Poggio disaster with a brilliant example from ancient Athens. During a conflict between the city-states of Corcyra and Corinth, both sent ambassadors to Athens, each trying to win Athenian support. The Corinthian ambassador gave a passionate, emotional speech, reminding Athens of all the favors Corinth had done, all the past alliances, the bonds of friendship. The Corcyran ambassador took a completely different approach. He admitted openly that Corcyra had never helped Athens before. No emotional appeals, no guilt trips. Instead, he made a cold, practical argument. Corcyra had the second largest navy in Greece, and an alliance would create a combined naval force so powerful that no rival would dare challenge them. Athens voted overwhelmingly to ally with Corcyra. The Corinthian ambassador lost because he played on the past. The Corcyran won because he played on the future. Remember this law every time you need to ask for help. Nobody cares what you did for them yesterday. They care about what you can do for them tomorrow. Let us shift gears. You are at a dinner party. The conversation is light, people are relaxed, their guard is down. Someone is telling a story, and you are listening closely, not because the story is fascinating, but because buried in the details are clues about what this person fears, what they desire, what makes them tick. Welcome to Law 14. Pose as a friend, work as a spy. And no, Greene is not asking you to become James Bond. He is talking about something far more subtle and far more powerful: the art of gathering intelligence through social conversation. The great French diplomat Talleyrand was perhaps the finest practitioner of this art in history. His contemporaries described his conversation as marked by wit and grace, but also by a strange quality. He rarely talked about himself. He concealed his thoughts behind a transparent veil of charm. He would ask probing, indirect questions. He would appear to share a secret, something personal, something heartfelt, and this would prompt the other person to share something real in return. Think about that. By pretending to open up, Talleyrand made others actually open up. A false confession draws out a real one. Greene also describes the approach of the legendary art dealer Joseph Duveen. For years, Duveen's white whale was the industrialist Andrew Mellon, a stiff, taciturn man who had zero interest in meeting the flamboyant dealer, so Duveen did not approach him directly. Instead, he put several members of Mellon's household staff on his own payroll. Through them, he learned Mellon's tastes, habits, and preferences in extraordinary detail. When Duveen finally bumped into Mellon at a London hotel, having arranged his room directly below Mellon's and timed his entry into the elevator to the second, the conversation flowed effortlessly. They had remarkably similar taste, Mellon thought. How delightful. Of course, there was nothing accidental about it. Duveen had studied his mark so thoroughly that he could mirror his preferences perfectly. From that day forward, Mellon bought art only from Duveen. The practical takeaway here is not about being sneaky. It is about the power of listening. Most people are so desperate to talk about themselves that they never really study the person in front of them. They miss the clues. The offhand remark that reveals an insecurity, the way someone lights up when a certain topic comes up, the body language that contradicts the words. Train yourself to listen more than you speak. Suppress your own ego in conversation, let others do the talking, and absorb everything. You will be amazed at what people will tell you when they feel heard, and the intelligence you gather will give you a decisive edge in every interaction that follows. Law 15. Crush your enemy totally. This is probably the most controversial law in the entire book, and Greene does not flinch from it. The principle is stark. If you have a genuine enemy, someone who wishes you harm, who will stop at nothing to undermine you, half measures are worse than no measures at all. Wound them and they will recover. Show mercy and they will interpret it as weakness. Leave one ember burning and the whole house eventually catches fire. The story Greene uses to illustrate this goes back to ancient China, the legendary rivalry between two generals, Shang Yu and Liu Pang. They started as allies, fighting on the same side during the collapse of the old dynasty. Shang Yu was a fearsome warrior, large, powerful, impulsive. Liu Pang was a peasant, a drinker, a schemer, not much of a fighter, but cunning beyond measure. When both men competed for supremacy, Shang Yu had Liu trapped, not once, but multiple times. Each time, he could have ended it. But something held him back. He respected Liu. He wanted to defeat him honorably in open battle, not through ambush or treachery. He wanted Liu to acknowledge his superiority, and each time he hesitated, Liu escaped. He used Xiang Yu's mercy as breathing room to regroup, rebuild, and come back stronger. Eventually, the tables turned. Liu's forces surrounded Xiang Yu's army, and when it was Liu's turn to show mercy, he did not hesitate. He destroyed Xiang Yu's army completely. The great warrior, alone and surrounded, cut his own throat rather than be captured. Liu Pang went on to become one of the greatest rulers in Chinese history. And it happened because he learned the lesson Xiang Yu never could. When the moment comes, do not let emotion cloud your judgment. Now, Greene is not telling you to literally crush people. In the modern world, we are talking about politics, business, social dynamics, but the principle holds. If someone has shown themselves to be an irreconcilable enemy, if reconciliation is truly impossible, then leaving them intact is the most dangerous thing you can do. Neutralize them completely. Remove their ability to retaliate. Because if you wound a viper and let it live, it will strike again. The reverse is equally important. If someone is not a true threat, do not make them one. Many people create enemies needlessly by overreacting. The law says crush your enemy totally, but only when they genuinely are your enemy. Misapply this law, and you will create the very threat you were trying to prevent. Here is a law that might surprise you. After spending the last few laws talking about action, gathering intelligence, winning through demonstration, crushing enemies, Greene now says sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is disappear. Law 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Think about it this way. The sun is the most powerful object in our sky. But do you appreciate it on a sunny Tuesday in July? Probably not. You appreciate it after a week of rain. It is absence that makes us truly value something. And this applies to people just as much as weather. Greene tells the remarkable story of Despise, a man in ancient Media who built a reputation as the fairest and most trustworthy judge in the land, People traveled from distant villages to have him settle their disputes. His fame grew and grew, until one day, at the height of his influence, Despise suddenly announced he was retiring. He was done. No more cases. Find someone else. The country immediately descended into chaos. Without their beloved arbiter, disputes escalated into violence. Crime spiked. Citizens who had taken his services for granted were now lost without him. After a month of this misery, representatives begged Despise to return, but this time, not as a judge, as their king, with absolute power. He had made them feel what life was like without him, and they gave him everything just to get him back. This is a principle that applies everywhere, in love, in business, in friendship. The person who is always available, always present, always accessible, becomes common. We take them for granted. Their value erodes through overexposure. But the person who knows when to step back, who creates strategic moments of scarcity, instantly becomes more valued, more desired, more respected. Now, there is a critical nuance here. This law only works after you have established your presence. If you disappear before anyone knows who you are not creating mystique, you are just forgotten. First, make yourself known, make yourself essential, and then, at the right moment, withdraw. The contrast between your presence and your absence is what generates the power. As the French courtesan Ninon de L'Enclos once put it, love never dies of starvation but often of indigestion. Too much of even a good thing makes it worthless. Learn when to leave, and your return will be treated like a resurrection. Humans are creatures of habit. We crave routine. We find comfort in knowing what to expect from the people around us, and their predictability gives us a sense of control over our environment. Now flip that around. What happens when someone is completely unpredictable? When you cannot anticipate their next move? It is terrifying. Law 17. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. The most famous chess match of the 20th century illustrates this perfectly. In 1972, the World Championship came down to American Bobby Fischer versus Russian Boris Spassky. Spassky was the reigning champion, methodical, patient, psychologically brilliant. He had beaten Fischer before by studying his patterns and exploiting them. But Fischer arrived in Reykjavik, Iceland, and immediately broke every pattern Spassky expected. He showed up late to the match, then almost did not show up at all. He complained about the lighting, the cameras, he even hated the chairs. He forfeited the second game entirely. He seemed erratic, possibly unhinged. Spassky did not know what to make of it. Was Fischer cracking under pressure? Was this some elaborate psychological ploy? Then, in Game 3, Fischer played with a ferocity no one had seen before. His eyes burned with intensity. He played moves that were not his style at all, approaches he had never used in any recorded game. Spassky started making mistakes. He began to cry after losing Game 6. By the end, he was convinced Fischer was hypnotizing him. He demanded the chairs be taken apart and examined for hidden devices. He accused Fischer of putting chemicals in the air. Fischer won the championship, and the key to his victory was not superior chess skill. Spassky was arguably his equal. It was that Fischer had completely scrambled his patterns, making himself impossible to read. Spassky's entire strategy depended on predicting Fischer's moves. When he could not, he unraveled. You do not have to be a chess grandmaster to use this principle. In everyday life, being predictable makes you boring and easy to manipulate. Occasionally doing something that does not match people's expectations, changing your approach, reacting differently than they anticipated, keeps them slightly off balance. They pay more attention to you. They cannot take you for granted, and they certainly cannot scheme against you when they do not know what you will do next. Predictability is the enemy of power. The moment everyone knows your next move, you have lost the initiative. Be deliberate about introducing surprise into your behavior, not recklessness, but strategic unpredictability. When we feel threatened, when enemies seem to be everywhere, our first instinct is to retreat, build walls, cut people off, huddle inside a fortress of our own making. Law 18. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous, and according to Greene, that instinct will get you killed. The first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huangdi, was one of the mightiest rulers in history. His empire was vaster than Alexander the Great's, but in the last years of his life, paranoia consumed him. He lived in a palace with 270 pavilions connected by secret underground passages. He slept in a different room every night. Anyone who accidentally saw him was beheaded. When he traveled, he wore disguises. Only a handful of people knew his location at any time. And then, far from his palace, alone except for a minister and a few servants, he suddenly died. His body had to be smuggled back to the capital in a carriage trailed by a cart of salted fish to mask the smell. He died as isolated as it is possible for a human being to be, cut off from his wives, his family, his court, his people. And the empire he had built with such ruthless efficiency crumbled almost immediately after. The fortress mentality is seductive because it feels safe, but Greene argues it is one of the most dangerous positions you can adopt. When you isolate yourself, you cut off the flow of information. You cannot see threats forming. You cannot hear the rumors. You lose touch with the people whose loyalty you need most. And worst of all, you become a conspicuous, stationary target. Everyone knows exactly where you are and exactly how to get to you. The counterexample is Louis XIV of France, who did the exact opposite. He built Versailles not as a fortress but as a fishbowl. He kept every powerful noble close, organized their lives around his daily routines, and maintained constant visibility. Nothing happened in that palace without his knowledge. No conspiracy could form because there was no privacy in which to hatch one. The king was everywhere, and his enemies could never gather in the shadows. The lesson for your own life: when you feel threatened, resist the urge to withdraw. Move closer to people, not further away. Circulate. Stay connected. Information is your best defense, and information only flows when you are in contact with others. Isolation feels like armor, but it is actually a prison. Every law we have discussed so far comes with an invisible asterisk, and that asterisk says the effectiveness of any strategy depends entirely on who you are using it on. Law 19. Know who you are dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. Greene is blunt about this. There are certain people who, if you misjudge them, will destroy you. Not because they are powerful in the conventional sense, but because something in their psychology makes them relentless, unforgiving, and disproportionately dangerous. He identifies 5 types you must learn to recognize. First, the arrogant and proud. These people have a hair-trigger sensitivity to any perceived slight. You might say something casual at a party, something you forget the next morning, but they never forget. Their pride has been wounded, and their reaction will be wildly out of proportion. Greene's advice is simple. If you sense an overactive pride, flee. Do not try to manage it, just leave. Second, the hopelessly insecure. Similar to the proud type, but less explosive and harder to spot. They will not attack you openly. They will nibble at you over months and years, undermining you in ways too small to notice individually but devastating in aggregate. Third, the suspicious. These people see betrayal everywhere. So how do you spot these types before it is too late? The answer is you watch their patterns. The suspicious are actually easier to deceive than you would think because their paranoia makes them predictable. But if you become the target of their suspicions, watch out. Fourth, and this is the most dangerous, the serpent with a long memory. This person shows no anger on the surface when you offend them. They are cold, calculating, patient. They will wait years for the right moment to strike. Greene warns, be doubly careful of this type, and if you realize you have hurt them, either remove them from your life completely or get them out of your sight. And finally, the plain, unassuming, and unintelligent. This type is not dangerous in the conventional sense. They will not plot revenge, but they are almost impossible to deceive or manipulate because they lack the imagination to take the bait. You will waste enormous time and energy trying to work them, achieving nothing. The most dramatic illustration comes from the story of Genghis Khan. In 1219, the Shah of Khwarezm, a man who saw himself as vastly superior to the unknown Mongol chieftain, insulted Khan's ambassadors, beheaded one, and sent the others back humiliated. The Shah saw Khan as a nuisance, a minor barbarian not worth taking seriously. Within 2 years, Khan had destroyed the Shah's empire, seized the great city of Samarkand, and become master of most of Asia. The Shah died in exile, a broken man. He had offended the wrong person. Never assume that someone who seems weaker or less important today will not be powerful tomorrow. The insult you throw casually today may be the grudge that fuels someone's rise against you for years to come. Law 20. Do not commit to anyone. This law is divided into 2 parts, and both of them challenge something we are taught from childhood: that loyalty and commitment are always virtues. Greene says not in the realm of power. The first part is about romantic and social commitment. Greene uses the brilliant example of Queen Elizabeth I, who for decades maintained her independence by refusing to marry despite enormous pressure from Parliament, her court, and all of Europe. Kings and princes from every nation courted her. She encouraged all of them, flirted outrageously, dangled the promise of marriage, but never committed. And that refusal was the secret engine of her power. As long as she remained unattached, every suitor kept trying. Every nation hoped it would be the one to win an alliance through marriage. The moment she chose one, she would have alienated all the others and become embroiled in their rivalries. By refusing to commit, she kept every option open and every player in Europe dancing to her tune. She understood something profound. The moment you commit, the magic is gone. You become predictable. People stop trying to win you over because they already have you or they have written you off. But the person who stays independent, who cannot quite be pinned down, maintains an almost gravitational pull. Others orbit around them, expending energy and attention just trying to gain their favor. The second part of the law addresses a different dimension. Do not get dragged into other people's fights. Greene's stunning example here is Isabella d'Este, ruler of the tiny Italian city-state of Mantua in the late 15th and early 16th centuries. Italy was a battlefield. Venice, Florence, Rome, and Milan were constantly fighting, and hovering above them all were France and Spain, each eager to grab whatever they could. Mantua, trapped in the middle, should have been devoured, but Isabella navigated this nightmare with almost superhuman skill. When France invaded Milan, she befriended the French king, charming him at parties, wearing her most stunning dresses, while secretly maintaining ties to Milan's displaced ruler. When Cesare Borgia's armies swept through Italy, she sent him lavish gifts and flattery while quietly keeping his troops out of Mantua. When the Pope waged war on her own brother's kingdom, she had her husband fight half-heartedly for the Pope while secretly allowing French troops to pass through her territory to help her brother. For 40 years, through regime changes, invasions, and civil wars, Isabella kept tiny Mantua independent and thriving, while every other power around her rose and fell. She did it by refusing to commit fully to any side. She was charming and supportive to everyone, indispensable to many, and loyal ultimately only to herself and her people. The lesson: your autonomy is your most precious asset. Do not let compassion, loyalty, or the pressure of the moment suck you into someone else's fight. Stay above the fray. The longer you maintain your independence, the more valuable you become to everyone, because everyone wants the ally who has not yet chosen a side. Here is a law that might bruise your ego, but that is precisely why it works. Law 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark? Nothing is more intolerable to people than feeling less intelligent than the person they are dealing with. Intelligence is one of the ego's most sensitive pressure points. So if you can make others feel smarter than you, even just slightly, their guard drops completely. They relax. They stop watching for tricks. And that is when they are most vulnerable. The greatest example in this chapter involves what may be the most audacious con in American history. In 1872, 2 grizzled prospectors named Philip Arnold and John Slack appeared in San Francisco with a stunning claim. They had discovered a diamond mine in the American West. They showed gems to jewelers. They led mining experts to the site via a deliberately confusing route where real diamonds were dug from the ground. They acted exactly like what they appeared to be: rough, uneducated country boys who had stumbled into a fortune and were too naive to understand what they had found. The cream of American finance descended on them, Horace Greeley, General McClellan, even Baron Rothschild. These sophisticated men took one look at Arnold and Slack in their ill-fitting clothes, gawking at the big city sights, and thought these bumpkins are in over their heads. Easy pickings. What none of them realized was that Arnold and Slack had purchased cheap gems in Europe for $12,000, then salted the mine, planting the stones for the experts to find. The experts were real. The jewelers were real. Even Tiffany himself confirmed the gems were genuine, but the two rustic prospectors were running the entire operation from behind a mask of stupidity. The financiers invested a fortune. Arnold and Slack walked away with over $700,000, and because their sale of mining rights had been technically legitimate, no law had been broken. Arnold went home to Kentucky, opened a bank, and lived comfortably for the rest of his life. The reason the scam worked was not the planted diamonds or the fake mine. It was the mask. Arnold and Slack looked and acted so convincingly unintelligent that the sharpest financial minds of the era never suspected them. In the presence of apparent stupidity, smart people feel superior, and superiority makes you careless. The ancient Chinese called this masquerading as a swine to kill the tiger. The tiger sees easy prey and drops its guard. You do not have to run a diamond con to apply this. In negotiations, in meetings, in social situations, downplaying your intelligence, showing some strategic cluelessness, asking for help and advice, all of these make others feel important and comfortable. And comfortable people are far easier to influence. This might be the most counterintuitive law in the entire book. We are taught from childhood that surrender is weakness, that you should stand your ground, fight for your honor, never back down. Law 22. Use the surrender tactic. Transform weakness into power. Greene says that attitude will get you destroyed. When you are weaker than your opponent, when the odds are stacked against you, fighting for honor's sake is not bravery, it is vanity. And vanity in the face of superior force is a death sentence. The island of Melis learned this the hard way. In 416 BC, Athens sent an overwhelming military force to the tiny island and offered a simple choice: submit peacefully or be destroyed. The Melians refused. They insisted on their right to independence. They appealed to the gods, to justice, to fairness. They trusted that Sparta would come to their rescue. Sparta never came. Athens invaded, slaughtered every man of military age, and sold the women and children into slavery. The Melians died for their honor, and nobody remembered their honor. They are remembered only as a cautionary tale, people who chose principle over pragmatism and paid with their civilization. Now contrast that with the German playwright Bertolt Brecht. In 1947, at the height of the anti-communist panic in America, Brecht was called before a congressional committee investigating supposed subversive influences in Hollywood. Other writers who testified took a confrontational approach. They argued, they challenged the committee's authority, they went down swinging, and they were blacklisted for years. Brecht took a completely different approach. He wore a suit, he smoked a cigar. Having heard the committee chairman loved cigars, he answered questions politely, using an interpreter even though his English was perfectly adequate, which gave him time to craft deliberately ambiguous responses. When committee members read his revolutionary poems in English, he would have the interpreter retranslate them from German, and somehow the inflammatory content became harmless. The committee members were charmed. They thanked him. They offered to help him with immigration issues. The next day, Brecht flew to East Germany and resumed his revolutionary writing without missing a beat. That is the surrender tactic. Outwardly, yield. Inwardly, remain firm. By appearing to submit, you buy time, disarm suspicion, and preserve your freedom to act when the moment is right. The people who refuse to surrender, who make a dramatic stand, often achieve nothing but martyrdom. And martyrdom, Greene reminds us, serves no purpose because you are not around to enjoy it. The smart move is to survive, to wait, to come back when the balance of power has shifted. As an old Ethiopian proverb says, when the great lord passes, the wise peasant bows deeply and silently farts. In a world that celebrates multitasking and keeping your options open, Law 23 delivers a sharp corrective. Stop spreading yourself thin. Concentrate. Law 23. Concentrate your forces. Greene opens with the cautionary tale of the kingdom of Wu in ancient China. Wu was a growing power with a formidable military. Its leaders decided to expand by attacking the powerful Middle Kingdom to the north, a massive campaign that stretched their resources across vast distances. Meanwhile, Wu's chief minister warned that the barbarous state of Yue to the south was watching, waiting for exactly this kind of overextension. The king ignored him. The minister, sensing catastrophe, sent his own son away to safety, a clear signal of dissent. The king was so enraged by this that he ordered the minister to kill himself. The minister obeyed, but before he died, he cried out for the king to tear out his eyes and fix them to the city gate so he could watch the enemy march in. Within a few years, exactly as the minister had predicted, the enemy swept through the undefended south and destroyed the kingdom of Wu. The king killed himself in shame. The greatest military power in the region had been obliterated because it scattered its forces instead of concentrating them. Greene contrasts this with the Rothschild banking family. Starting from a single house in the Jewish ghetto of Frankfurt, the Rothschilds built the most powerful financial dynasty in European history. Their secret was concentration in every sense. The family patriarch attached himself to a single powerful client rather than spreading his services thin. He employed only family members. He refused to let outsiders into the business. When his 5 sons spread across Europe to London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt, they maintained iron discipline. All communications were in a private dialect written in code no outsider could decipher. They married within the family to prevent dilution of loyalty. Their wealth was never dispersed, never scattered to the winds. One arrow hitting one target is infinitely more effective than 5 arrows scattered to the wind. Find your richest mine and dig deep, rather than hopping from shallow mine to shallow mine. Identify your single most important goal and pour your energy into it with total intensity. As the legendary Casanova himself once wrote, when a man devotes himself completely to a single goal, he must succeed, whatever the difficulties. Intensity defeats extensity every time. We have reached the final law of part 2. And in many ways, it is the capstone, the law that ties all the others together. Law 24. Play the perfect courtier. Throughout history, a court has always formed around the person in power, whether it is a king's palace, a corporate headquarters, or a social circle. And the people who thrive in these courts, the courtiers, have mastered a very specific set of skills. Not technical skills or intellectual talents, but something more subtle. The art of indirect power. Greene lays out the rules of the perfect courtier, and they read like a masterclass in social intelligence. First, avoid ostentation. The more you brag about your achievements, the more suspicion and envy you attract. Let others do the praising. Second, practice nonchalance. Your talent should seem to flow naturally. Nobody wants to see the sweat and effort behind your success. Make whatever you say or do appear uncontrived and effortless. Third, never criticize those above you directly. If you must advise a superior, make your criticism so indirect, so wrapped in suggestion that they feel they arrived at the correction themselves. Greene illustrates this with the architect Jules Mansart, who served Louis XIV. Mansart's technique was brilliant. He would deliberately include a small flaw in every design he presented to the king. Louis would spot the flaw and propose how to solve it, at which point Mansart would exclaim for all to hear that he would never have seen the problem that the king so masterfully found and solved. He would burst with admiration, confessing that next to the king he was but a lowly pupil. Louis loved this. He made Mansart the royal architect of Versailles. And Mansart never once had to argue, plead, or criticize. He simply let the king feel like the genius in the room. Other rules of courtship. Be frugal with flattery, because too much is suspicious. Never bear bad news if you can avoid it. Alter your style to fit the person you are dealing with. Be a source of pleasure. Master your emotions. Never joke about appearance or taste. And always make the master feel like the sun around which everything revolves. But Greene also includes a dramatic warning. He tells the story of Talleyrand playing a practical joke on Napoleon arranging for a supposed boar hunt in a Paris park to actually involve two enormous pigs purchased from a local market. Napoleon, enraged and humiliated when he discovered the ruse, never fully trusted Talleyrand again. Months of carefully built trust were damaged by a single misjudged moment of humor. The lesson is clear. Courtiership is a delicate game. Every move must be carefully calibrated. One misstep, one joke that lands wrong, one moment of carelessness, and years of careful positioning can evaporate. Never imagine that because the master laughs at your wit, you can say whatever you want. Never assume that favor is permanent. The perfect courtier never takes their position for granted. They remain eternally vigilant, reading the room at every moment, adjusting their behavior like a musician tuning an instrument, always listening for the slightest disharmony. Let us step back and pull together the most powerful lessons from these 12 laws. If you take nothing else from this video, take these. First, and this is the foundation of everything we covered today, never appeal to gratitude. People do not want to feel indebted to you. If you need something, frame it as a mutual benefit. Show others how helping you helps them. Self-interest is the only reliable currency in human relationships. Second, information is power. But the best intelligence comes not from espionage, but from conversation. Learn to listen deeply, suppress your own ego, and let others reveal themselves to you. Third, when you are outmatched, do not fight, surrender. Not because you are weak, but because survival is the prerequisite for everything else. Time is on your side if you stay alive. Fourth, unpredictability is one of your greatest assets. The moment you become predictable, you become controllable. Introduce strategic surprise into your behavior. Keep people guessing. Fifth, never isolate yourself, no matter how threatened you feel. Isolation looks like safety but functions like a trap. Stay connected. Circulate. The crowd is your shield. Sixth, your independence is sacred. Do not let emotion, obligation, or pressure drag you into commitments that serve someone else's agenda. Stay above the fray. The person who refuses to take sides ends up with the most options and the most power. And seventh, the overarching lesson of the perfect courtier. Power is not a blunt instrument. It is an art form. The most powerful people in history did not seize power through brute force. They attracted it through charm, subtlety, and an almost supernatural ability to read the people around them. Take a moment to sit with all of this. These are not just historical curiosities. These are the invisible dynamics playing out in your office, your family, your friendships every single day. The question is not whether the game of power exists. It does, and it always will. The question is whether you will be a conscious player or an unwitting pawn. In part 3, we will go even deeper into the laws of image, boldness, spectacle, and self-creation. Robert Greene will show you how the way the world sees you is something you can deliberately construct and control. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 12 laws hit you the hardest? Was it the idea that gratitude is a burden, not a bond? The power of strategic surrender? The dangerous art of courtiership? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. If you want to experience the full depth of this book, I have put links in the description to grab it on Amazon or listen free on Audible with a 30-day trial. And if you have not already, subscribe. I publish new deep dive book summaries every week, and part 3 of the 48 Laws of Power is coming soon. Remember, power is not about domination. It is about understanding. The more clearly you see the game, the more freely you can choose how to play it. I will see you in the next one. Most people spend their entire lives trying to be themselves. They think authenticity is the ultimate virtue. But Robert Greene argues the exact opposite. He says the most powerful people in history were never themselves. They were actors, shapeshifters, masters of illusion who understood something most of us never will. The image you project to the world is worth more than the truth you keep inside. This is where the game of power gets dangerous. Welcome back. This is part 3 of our journey through the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. If you've been with us for parts 1 and 2, you already understand the foundations. You know how to protect yourself, guard your reputation, conceal your intentions, and navigate the social chessboard. But now we enter a different arena entirely, because laws 25 through 36 are about something deeper, something most people never even think about. They're about mastering your image, the way you are perceived, the way you move through the world, the way you shape reality itself through appearance, spectacle, and bold action. Greene is going to show you that power is not just about what you do, it's about how it looks when you do it. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You already have an image. You already have a persona. The question is whether you built it yourself or whether it was built for you by your upbringing, your environment, the expectations of people around you. The powerful take control of that process. They become the authors of their own story. So let's begin. And we start with one of the most liberating laws in the entire book. Law 25. Recreate yourself. Do not accept the roles that society forces on you. Forge a new identity, one that commands attention and never bores the audience. Be the master of your own image rather than letting others define it for you. Think about Julius Caesar for a moment. Before he was the most powerful man in Rome, he was a young politician trying to stand out in a city full of ambitious men. And his first major move wasn't a military victory or a political speech. It was a spectacle. In 65 BC, Caesar took on the role of Aedile, the official in charge of public games and entertainment. And he didn't just organize events, he poured his personal fortune into creating the most breathtaking spectacles Rome had ever seen. Wild beast hunts, massive gladiator shows, theatrical contests that left audiences gasping. Now here's the thing. Caesar didn't do this because he loved entertainment. He did it because he understood that in the game of power, you are always performing. The public stage is real, and the character you play on it determines how much power you accumulate. And Caesar played his character to perfection. When he crossed the Rubicon with his army, triggering a civil war, he didn't just march across a river. He turned it into theater. He stood before his generals, pointed to a figure on the far bank blowing a trumpet, and declared the moment a sign from the gods. His generals were uncertain, hesitant, but his dramatic flair overwhelmed their doubt. They rallied to his cause. One performance changed the course of Western history. On the battlefield, Caesar always positioned himself at the center of the action, riding the strongest horse, visible to every soldier. He wore the most striking purple robes. He timed his entrances and exits for maximum dramatic effect. Even his death was theatrical. When the assassins surrounded him, he pulled his robe over his face and arranged it so he would fall with dignity. Now contrast this with someone who refused to play the game. Think about the countless talented people you've known, maybe even yourself, who believed that merit alone would carry them, that if they just did good work, the world would notice. Greene's argument is brutal but honest. The world doesn't notice. The world is a stage, and those who refuse to perform on it get pushed to the margins. But here's the liberating part. You don't have to be born with Caesar's charisma. The French writer Aurore Dupin had no wealth, no connections, no advantages. When she moved to Paris in the 1830s to pursue a writing career, an editor told her she should go home and have babies instead of writing books. Women simply weren't taken seriously as writers, so she recreated herself entirely. She adopted the name George Sand. She began wearing men's clothing, long coats, heavy boots, dandyish cravats. She smoked cigars. She spoke with a boldness that was unheard of for women of her era. And the effect was electric. Paris was fascinated. This strange, ambiguous figure, not quite male, not quite female, became the center of intellectual society. She had affairs with Chopin, Musset, Liszt. She became the most famous writer in France. George Sand didn't change her talent. She changed her packaging. She understood that the role society assigned her, quiet, domestic woman, would suffocate her ambitions. So she tore up the script and wrote her own. Think about it. What role has society assigned to you? What script are you following that someone else wrote? Greene says the act of recreating yourself is Promethean. It makes you responsible for your own creation, and that is where real power begins. Now, recreating yourself is one thing, But the next law reminds us that power also requires keeping your hands clean. Law 26. Keep your hands clean. You must seem like a paragon of civility and efficiency. Your hands should never be soiled by mistakes or nasty deeds. Use others as scapegoats and as tools to disguise your involvement. In the 2nd century AD, the Chinese general Cao found himself in a crisis. He was besieging a key city when his supply lines faltered. Food was running low. His soldiers began grumbling that the general was eating well while they starved. Cao could feel mutiny brewing, so he summoned his chief of commissariat. He told the man, calmly and almost sadly, that he needed to borrow something. The chief asked what. Cao replied, "Your head." The chief protested. He'd done nothing wrong, and Cao agreed. But he explained that without a visible sacrifice, without someone to absorb the army's frustration, there would be a revolt. The chief was executed that day. His head was displayed publicly. The grumbling stopped. The army fought on. Now, that's a brutal story. But the principle beneath it operates everywhere, in far less violent forms. When something goes wrong in an organization, in a government, in any hierarchy, someone has to take the fall. The question is whether it will be you or someone else. Greene says the powerful never apologize directly for their mistakes. Apologies invite doubt. They open the door to questions about your competence, your judgment. Instead, the powerful find a convenient scapegoat, someone who can absorb the blame while the leader's reputation stays intact. Caesar Borgia understood this perfectly. When he conquered Romagna in northern Italy, the region was lawless. He appointed a brutal lieutenant named Ramiro de Orio to restore order. De Orio did exactly what was asked. He crushed the criminal elements with ruthless efficiency, but the people came to hate him. So Borgia made a calculated move. One morning, the townspeople of Cesena woke to find De Orio's headless body in the public square, dressed in fine clothes, his head impaled on a pike beside a bloody knife. Borgia had used De Orio to do the dirty work, then sacrificed him to win the people's love. His hands stayed clean. The companion concept here is what Greene calls the cat's paw, using someone else to do your bidding without them even realizing it. Like Cleopatra, who never directly eliminated her rivals. Instead, she seduced Caesar and later Mark Antony into doing it for her. They removed her enemies, fought her wars, and dismantled every threat to her throne. And she never appeared to have blood on her hands. The lesson is not about cruelty. It's about understanding that in the eyes of the public, appearances matter more than reality. The person who seems clean, who seems fair, who seems above the fray, that person holds power. The one who is seen struggling, apologizing, getting their hands dirty, that person looks weak. But how do you attract the kind of loyalty that makes people willing to follow you, even worship you? That's the subject of the next law. Law 27. Play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. People have an overwhelming desire to believe in something. Become the center of that desire by offering them a cause, a new faith. Keep your words vague but full of promise. Emphasize enthusiasm over logic. Give your new followers rituals to perform and sacrifices to make. Now, before you think this is about starting an actual cult, let that sink in for a moment. Greene isn't necessarily talking about robes and chanting. He's talking about a dynamic that exists in every area of life: business, politics, entertainment, social movements. Whenever people gather around a leader or an idea with passionate, almost irrational devotion, the same principles are at work. In the 1650s, a young Italian named Francesco Borri claimed he'd had a vision. The archangel Michael had appeared and told him he was destined for greatness. He said he now had the power to see into people's souls and would soon discover the philosopher's stone, the legendary substance that could turn base metals into gold. It sounds absurd, but Borri was brilliantly strategic about how he presented himself. He gave up his former life of gambling and pleasure, which made his transformation seem genuine. He spoke with intense enthusiasm but kept the details vague. He created an order of disciples organized into 6 levels of spiritual rank, and critically, he demanded that his followers hand over all their worldly possessions. Yet they did so willingly. Because Borri gave them something priceless, the feeling that they were part of something extraordinary. Greene breaks down the formula into 5 steps. First, keep it vague and keep it simple. Use grand words with cloudy meanings. This allows people to project their own fantasies onto your vision. Second, emphasize the visual and the sensual over the intellectual. Dazzle them, overwhelm their senses so they can't think critically. Third, borrow the forms of organized religion, rituals, hierarchy, titles, ceremonies. These tap into deep psychological needs that have existed for millennia. Fourth, disguise your source of income. Your followers want to believe that wealth flows naturally from the truth of your methods. If they see that you're getting rich off their devotion, the spell breaks. And fifth, this is crucial. Create an us versus them dynamic. Unite your followers against a common enemy. Nothing bonds a group faster than a shared threat, real or imagined. Now, Greene is careful to note the danger here. If the group ever sees through you, the same passion that elevated you will tear you apart. A crowd that worshipped you will destroy you with equal fervor. So this is a power tool that must be wielded with extreme caution, but the psychology is real. And understanding it, whether you intend to use it or simply want to protect yourself from it, is essential knowledge in the game of power. Law 28. Enter action with boldness. If you are unsure of a course of action, do not attempt it. Your doubts will infect your execution. Timidity is dangerous. Better to enter with boldness. Any mistakes you commit through audacity are easily corrected with more audacity. In 1925, a man named Count Victor Lustig, one of the most audacious con artists in history, pulled off the impossible. He sold the Eiffel Tower to a scrap metal dealer for a fortune. And the reason it worked wasn't some elaborate scheme or advanced technology. It was sheer breathtaking boldness. Lustig had read in the newspaper that the Eiffel Tower was in desperate need of repair. He saw his opportunity. Posing as a government official, he invited 5 of France's top scrap metal dealers to a confidential meeting at the most luxurious hotel in Paris. He told them the government had decided to tear down the tower. It was too expensive to maintain, and that the metal would be sold for scrap. He showed them official-looking government documents. He gave them a tour of the tower itself. Now here's where the boldness comes in. The lie was so enormous, so outrageous that the dealers never questioned it. Who would fabricate something so absurd? The very size of the deception made it believable. One dealer was so eager he submitted a bid immediately, and when he began to have second thoughts, Lustig sensed the hesitation and did something brilliant. He asked for a bribe. The moment the dealer heard this, his doubts vanished. Of course, a government official would want a bribe. That was normal. That was real. The bribe actually made the con more convincing. The dealer handed over a certified check for 250,000 francs plus the bribe. Lustig disappeared, and the dealer was so embarrassed he never went to the police. In fact, Lustig came back to Paris 6 months later and sold the Eiffel Tower a second time. Greene's point is psychological. Hesitation creates gaps. Gaps that allow doubt to creep in, both in yourself and in others. When you move with boldness, those gaps disappear. People are naturally drawn to confidence. They assume that someone who acts with such conviction must have a reason for it. Boldness also disarms your opponents. They expect caution, negotiation, hedging. When you go all in, they don't know how to respond. But there's a flip side. A young Ivan the Terrible spent years being mocked and bullied by the powerful boyar families who controlled Russia. They dressed him up in royal robes as a joke, then shoved him aside. He said nothing. He waited. And then one evening, at age 13, he summoned the boyar leader to his room, where palace guards were waiting. He pointed his finger and ordered the man arrested and killed. In one swift, bold stroke, the boy who had been a puppet became a czar who ruled for decades through fear and respect. Greene says boldness has a quality that timidity never will. It separates you from the herd. It makes you memorable. It forces others to deal with you on your terms. And when you make a mistake through boldness, you can correct it with more boldness. But a mistake born of timidity, that digs a grave you may never climb out of. Law 29. Plan all the way to the end. The ending is everything. Plan all the way to it, taking into account every possible consequence, obstacle, and twist of fortune. By planning to the end, you will not be overwhelmed by circumstances and you will know when to stop. Let me tell you about a man who had every gift except this one. Vasco Núñez de Balboa was a Spanish explorer obsessed with finding El Dorado, the legendary city of gold. He was bold, he was daring, he was resourceful. He stowed away in a provision chest on a ship leaving the Caribbean, eventually talked his way into becoming governor of a new colony, and then made history by becoming the first European to see the Pacific Ocean. Incredible achievements. But Balboa had a fatal flaw. He could never see past the next victory. He announced his discoveries publicly, attracting swarms of rivals. He failed to secure political protection back in Spain. He left the door wide open for others to take what he had found. And sure enough, a soldier in his own army, Francisco Pizarro, eventually helped get Balboa arrested and beheaded on trumped-up charges. Pizarro went on to conquer the Incan Empire. Balboa's deeds were forgotten. Compare that to Otto von Bismarck, who planned everything years in advance. In the 1860s, Bismarck wanted one thing: a unified Germany under Prussian leadership. He started a war with Denmark, not to conquer Denmark, but to stir up Prussian nationalism. Then he provoked a war with Austria, not to seize Austrian territory, but to establish Prussian independence. Then he engineered a war with France, not for French land, but to unite the German states against a common enemy. 3 wars, each one precisely calibrated, each one serving the next move. And when he had achieved his goal, when Germany was unified and he was its most powerful leader, he stopped. He resisted every pressure to keep conquering. He spent the rest of his career maintaining peace because he had planned to the end. He knew exactly where the finish line was, and he refused to run past it. Greene says most people are the opposite of Bismarck. They are ruled by emotion. They react to events as they come. They may have a vague dream of where they want to end up, but they mistake that dream for a plan. When obstacles appear, they improvise. And improvisation, in the game of power, is a recipe for disaster. The ending is everything. Whether it's a business deal, a career move, a relationship, or a confrontation, think through every possible outcome before you begin. Ask yourself, what happens after I win? Who will resent me? What new problems will my success create? What is the end game? Because if you don't know where you're going, you will almost certainly end up somewhere you don't want to be. Law 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. All the toil and practice behind your work must be concealed. When you act as if you could do much more. Avoid revealing how hard you work. It only raises questions. And teach no one your tricks, or they will be used against you. The great tea master Sen no Rikyu embodied this law more than perhaps anyone in history. In 16th century Japan, the tea ceremony was elevated to an art form, and Rikyu was its supreme practitioner. But his genius wasn't in complexity. It was in making the most elaborate preparations appear completely natural. One night before Emperor Hideyoshi was scheduled to visit, snow began to fall. Rikyu laid round cushions on each of the stepping stones leading through his garden. Just before dawn, he removed the cushions, leaving the stones perfectly unobstructed by snow, clean, round, beautiful. When Hideyoshi arrived, he marveled at the sight. It seemed like nature itself had cooperated. He never knew about the hours of effort behind the effect. On another occasion, a host invited Rikyu to tea. Walking through the host's garden, Rikyu noticed an antique-looking gate. His son remarked on how it gave the place a lovely, lonely appearance. But Rikyu saw through it immediately. The gate had been transported from a distant mountain temple at great expense. If the host put that much effort into one gate, the entire tea ceremony would reek of striving and affectation. Rikyu left early. He couldn't stand it. The Italian writer Castiglione had a word for this quality: sprezzatura. The art of making the difficult seem easy, of concealing all the labor and tricks behind a graceful, natural performance. It's the secret weapon of the most compelling people in every field. Think about it. When you watch a great athlete, a great speaker, a great performer, what captivates you isn't visible effort. It's the illusion of ease. You think, this person has a gift, this comes naturally to them. They must be extraordinary. But behind that illusion are years of practice and rivers of sweat that you will never see. The escape artist Harry Houdini was a master of this. His escapes sometimes took only minutes, but he would stretch them to an hour, making the audience sweat while he seemed to be struggling. In reality, the struggle was performance. The real work happened in his workshop, where he spent thousands of hours studying locks, training his muscles, and learning to control his breathing. When he finally emerged from the handcuffs or the sealed water tank, it looked like a miracle. Nobody saw the machinery behind it. Greene says there's a practical reason for this beyond impressing people. When you reveal your effort, you demystify yourself. You become ordinary. People think, well, if he had to work that hard, maybe anyone could do it. But when your achievements seem effortless, you seem godlike. And godlike figures attract power like gravity attracts mass. Law 31. Control the options. The best deceptions give the other person a choice. Your victims feel they are in control, but they are actually your puppets. Give people options that work in your favor no matter which one they choose. In 1564, Ivan the Terrible faced a crisis. His power was being eroded from every direction. The boyars defied him. The church resisted him. His own ministers second-guessed his decisions. Russia was too vast, his enemies too numerous. Attacking any one of them would leave him exposed to the others. He seemed trapped. So Ivan did something nobody expected. One December morning, the citizens of Moscow woke to find hundreds of sleds filling the square before the Kremlin, loaded with the Tsar's treasures. They watched, stunned, as Ivan boarded a sled and left the city. He established himself in a village miles away and refused to explain why. For an entire month, Moscow descended into panic. Without their Tsar, who would protect them from the boyars, who would keep order. Then a letter arrived. Ivan explained that the boyars had betrayed him so deeply that he was abdicating. He was done. The people could find a new leader, but the citizens didn't want a new leader. They wanted Ivan. And now Ivan gave them a choice. Either they grant him absolute power to rule without any interference from the boyars, or they accept his abdication and the chaos that would follow. It wasn't really a choice at all. Ivan had designed the options so that every path led to his victory. The people chose to give him absolute power, and from then on, anyone who complained about his harsh rule was reminded that they themselves had chosen it. Ivan's withdrawal had been a performance, a brilliant manipulation of other people's options. Greene describes several versions of this technique. You can color the choices, presenting options in a way that makes the one you prefer seem obviously superior. Henry Kissinger did this constantly with President Nixon. You can shrink the options over time, like art dealers who show you progressively worse paintings each time you visit, making you rush to buy before the quality drops further. You can even put someone on the horns of a dilemma where every possible response works in your favor. The key insight is that people need to feel they have a choice. That illusion of freedom is essential. The moment someone suspects they're being manipulated, they resist. But when they believe they're choosing freely, they walk straight into your design without a second thought. Law 32. Play to people's fantasies. The truth is often ugly and unpleasant. Never appeal to truth and reality unless you're prepared for the anger that comes from disenchantment. Life is harsh. People who can manufacture romance or conjure up fantasy are like oases in the desert. Everyone flocks to them. In the late 1500s, Venice was dying. For centuries, it had been the wealthiest city in Europe, controlling trade to the east. With the discovery of the New World had shifted power to the Atlantic coast, to Spain, Portugal, England. Venice's economy crumbled. Noble families went bankrupt. Banks collapsed. A deep depression settled over a city that still remembered its glorious past. Then word spread of a mysterious stranger, a man called Il Bragadino, an alchemist who had discovered the secret of multiplying gold. He lived in a magnificent palace. He wore fabulous clothing. Gold coins clinked constantly in his hands, and he claimed he could save Venice. The Venetian nobility fell over themselves to invite him. They watched in awe as he demonstrated his abilities, seeming to transform worthless minerals into gold dust. The Senate debated whether to officially sponsor him. When they heard the Duke of Mantua was also courting him, they panicked and voted to bring him to Venice immediately, at the city's expense. Bragadino arrived and lived lavishly, all funded by the Republic. He promised that his mysterious substance, if left undisturbed for 7 years, would multiply the gold in Venice's mint 30 times over. Most of the senators agreed to wait. Months passed. Years passed. Not a single ounce of new gold appeared. But the fantasy was so powerful, so desperately needed, that people clung to it long after any rational person would have let go. Eventually, Bragadino's enemies forced his hand, and he fled to Munich, where he repeated the entire performance with the Duke of Bavaria. The pattern was always the same: find people drowning in harsh reality, offer them a glittering fantasy, and watch them hand over their money and their reason. Now, Bragadino was eventually caught and executed. So there's a warning here. But the underlying psychology is timeless. People do not want to hear that their problems stem from their own mistakes. They don't want to hear that success requires years of grinding work. They want to believe in a shortcut, a transformation, a miracle. Greene isn't saying you should become a con artist. He's saying you should understand this hunger for fantasy, because it's one of the most powerful forces in human nature. The person who can tap into it, who can promise the moon while keeping their feet on the ground, holds enormous power. Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. Everyone has a weakness, a gap in the castle wall. That weakness is usually an insecurity, an uncontrollable emotion, or a secret pleasure. Once found, it is a thumbscrew you can turn to your advantage. In the early 1600s, a young bishop named Richelieu was trying to claw his way to power in France. He had no allies, no connections. He was starting from nothing, but Richelieu had one extraordinary gift. He could read people. He could sense their hidden desires and unspoken fears in a single conversation. When Richelieu looked at the French political landscape, he didn't see kings and ministers. He saw vulnerabilities. He noticed that the Queen Mother, Marie de Médicis, despite her immense power, was deeply insecure. She craved masculine attention and validation. So Richelieu showered her with praise and devotion. Not in an obvious, sycophantic way, that would have backfired, but with a steady stream of warmth, loyalty, and respect that made her feel seen and valued. It worked beautifully. Marie made Richelieu her most trusted advisor. She elevated him to cardinal. And when her son, the young King Louis XIII, took the throne, Richelieu moved to the next link in the chain. He recognized that Louis was essentially a helpless child in a man's body, insecure, indecisive, secretly yearning for someone strong to lean on. So Richelieu became that strength. He pushed Louis into bold ventures, made himself indispensable, and for 18 years governed France as its true ruler, all by understanding and exploiting the psychological weaknesses of those above him. Greene outlined several strategies for finding these thumbscrews. Pay attention to unconscious gestures and passing remarks. People reveal their weaknesses in unguarded moments. Look for the helpless child inside every adult. Most of us carry unmet needs from childhood that never disappear. Watch for contrasts between someone's public image and their private behavior. The person who acts tough is often deeply insecure. And fill the emotional voids you discover. Insecurity and unhappiness are the two most exploitable weaknesses. Now, some of this may sound manipulative, and honestly it can be. But Greene's argument is that these dynamics exist whether you acknowledge them or not. People are constantly being influenced through their weaknesses. The only question is whether you'll understand the game or be a pawn in someone else's. Law 34. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. The way you carry yourself determines how you are treated. Appear vulgar or common, and people will disrespect you. Respect yourself, and others will follow. Christopher Columbus was the son of a cheese vendor. Let me say that again. A cheese vendor. He had almost no formal education. He knew next to nothing about navigation. He couldn't even work a quadrant, and yet he convinced the King of Portugal to grant him an audience, charmed his way into the Spanish court, married into an established noble family, and ultimately persuaded Queen Isabella to fund one of the most ambitious voyages in history. How did he do it? Not through qualifications, not through connections, through attitude. Columbus carried himself as if he were descended from royalty. He invented a noble lineage for himself. He made demands so audacious. The title Grand Admiral of the Oceanic Sea, the office of Viceroy over all discovered lands, 10% of all future commerce, that the people he was negotiating with assumed he must be worth it, because who would dare ask for so much unless they truly believed they deserved it? And that's the paradox. When King João of Portugal turned Columbus down, he did so politely, treating the demands as legitimate. The very boldness of the request elevated Columbus in the king's eyes. A man who sets a high price on himself sends a signal that is almost impossible to ignore. Now contrast this with King Louis Philippe of France, who came to power in 1830. Louis Philippe hated the trappings of royalty. He dressed plainly, carried an umbrella instead of a scepter, walked the streets like an ordinary citizen, and talked endlessly about money and business with his banker friends. He thought this common touch would endear him to the people. It did the opposite. The aristocracy found him embarrassing. The common people saw through his act. He was a wealthy man pretending to be one of them, and the pretense was insulting. His own banker friends began treating him with contempt. One day, James Rothschild actually scolded the king publicly for being late. The King of France, berated by a banker. When revolution came in 1848, no one lifted a finger to save him. He vanished into exile without a trace. Greene's lesson is simple but profound. You are the one who sets your own price. How you carry yourself tells the world what you think you're worth. Demand respect and you will get it. Shuffle and apologize, and the world will treat you like a doormat. This doesn't mean being arrogant. Arrogance is insecurity in disguise. It means having a quiet, unshakable confidence in your own value. Law 35. Master the art of timing. Never seem to be in a hurry. Hurrying betrays a lack of control. Always seem patient, as if you know that everything will come to you eventually. Learn to detect the right moment, and to strike fiercely when it arrives. No one in modern history mastered timing better than Joseph Fouché, the French politician who survived every revolution, every regime change, every purge of the late 18th and early 19th centuries. While heads rolled all around him, literally, Fouché kept his. His secret was an almost supernatural sense of timing. During the French Revolution, he started as a moderate when moderates were in power. When the radicals took over, he became a radical. When the winds shifted again, he anticipated the backlash and positioned himself on the side of the victims. When Napoleon rose to power, Fouché was there to serve him. When Napoleon fell, Fouché was there to serve his successor. And when that successor fell too, Fouché was still standing. Greene identifies three kinds of time that the powerful must master. First, long time. The patience to wait for the right moment without being driven to rash action by anxiety or impatience. This is defensive timing. You don't react, you observe. You let your enemies exhaust themselves. Second, forced time. The ability to speed up or slow down the pace for your opponents. Make them wait and they grow anxious. Impose a deadline and they make mistakes. Third, end time. When you have waited and positioned yourself perfectly, you strike with devastating speed and finality. The great Chinese painter Cho Yung told a story that captures this perfectly. Late one winter afternoon, he set out to cross a river carrying important documents. A boy helped carry them. As the sun set, Cho asked the boatman if they'd reach the town before its gates closed. The boatman glanced at the boy and the loosely tied bundle of papers and said, "Yes, if you do not walk too fast." Cho ignored the advice and hurried. The string broke, papers scattered across the ground. By the time they had gathered everything, the gates were shut. When you force the pace out of fear and impatience, you create the very problems you were trying to avoid. And then you spend even more time fixing them. The patient player who waits for the right moment and then moves decisively will always outperform the frantic one who lunges at every opportunity. Law 36. Disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge. By acknowledging a petty problem, you give it existence and credibility. The more attention you pay an enemy, the stronger you make him. It is sometimes best to leave things alone. If there is something you want but cannot have, show contempt for it. The less interest you reveal, the more superior you seem. In 1916, the Mexican rebel Pancho Villa raided a town in New Mexico, killing 17 Americans. President Woodrow Wilson was under enormous pressure to respond. His advisors insisted that for a power as large as the United States not to retaliate would be humiliating, so Wilson sent 10,000 troops into Mexico to capture Villa. What followed was one of the most embarrassing episodes in American military history. Villa knew the terrain. The Mexican people, who had actually grown tired of Villa's banditry, now rallied behind him, because nothing unites people like a foreign invasion. The mighty American army chased Villa for months through deserts and mountains, sweating through heat and mosquitoes, following false leads planted by sympathetic locals. Villa watched from a mountain cave as General Pershing marched his exhausted troops back and forth, never getting closer. Eventually, Wilson had to withdraw. The expedition had cost a fortune, accomplished nothing, and turned Villa from a fading bandit into a folk hero. A giant power had made a tiny enemy look enormous by taking him too seriously. Greene's principle is elegant. When you acknowledge a problem, you give it power. When you react to a slight, you validate it. When you chase what you can't have, you advertise your weakness. The powerful response, the royal response, is contempt. Not loud, angry contempt, quiet, dismissive indifference. The kind that says, "You are beneath my notice." King Henry VIII used this weapon devastatingly against Catherine of Aragon when he wanted to annul their marriage. He didn't argue with her. He didn't negotiate with the Pope. He simply stopped acknowledging their authority over him. He acted as if Catherine were already his ex-wife, and the Pope's opinion was irrelevant. This drove both of them to distraction, because there is nothing more infuriating than being ignored by someone you're trying to influence. Henry eventually broke with Rome entirely and created his own church, all through the power of disdain. The same principle works in everyday life. That colleague who spreads gossip about you, ignore them, and their words lose their charge. That competitor who tries to provoke you, refuse to engage, and they look foolish for picking a fight with someone who won't fight back. The person who rejected you, show complete indifference, and suddenly you're the one with the power. As Greene puts it, desire creates a paradox. The more you chase after something, the more it eludes you. The more interest you show, the weaker you appear. Turn your back on what you want, show contempt for it, and you reverse the dynamic entirely. And that brings us to the close of part 3. Let's pull all of this together. If there's one thread running through laws 25 through 36, it's this: power is not about raw force. It's about perception. It's about the image you project, the drama you create, the illusions you master. The people who truly understand power know that what others see is more important than what is real. Recreate yourself. Don't accept the identity the world assigns you. Keep your hands clean, even when dirty work must be done. Understand the overwhelming human need to believe, and use it wisely. Move with boldness, because hesitation is the real danger. Plan to the end, so you know when to stop. Make your achievements look effortless. Control the choices others make. Play to their fantasies. Find their hidden weaknesses. Carry yourself like royalty. Master the rhythm of time, and disdain what you cannot have. Because the less interest you show, the more powerful you seem. These laws are not about manipulating people for selfish ends. They're about understanding the invisible currents that govern human interaction. You can use them to build, to lead, to protect, to create, or you can ignore them and wonder why the world never seems to give you what you deserve. If you take nothing else from this video, take this: you are always performing. Every day, in every interaction, you are either consciously shaping how the world sees you, or you're letting the world decide for you. The powerful choose the first option, every single time. In part 4, we'll enter the final and most dangerous territory of all: emotional warfare, formlessness, envy, and the endgame of power. Greene saves his most advanced and his most ruthless lessons for last. Which of these 12 laws hit you the hardest? Was it the idea of recreating yourself? The power of disdain, the importance of making things look effortless. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. If you want to read the full book, I've put links to get it on Amazon and listen free on Audible in the description below. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss part 4. Until next time, remember, the game of power is always being played. The only question is whether you're playing it consciously. Most people believe that power comes from force, from being louder, tougher, more aggressive than everyone around you. But Robert Greene, in the final 12 laws of his legendary book, The 48 Laws of Power, reveals something that turns that belief on its head. The most dangerous people in history, the ones who built empires, toppled kings, and reshaped entire civilizations, did not rely on brute strength. They mastered something far more subtle: emotional warfare, the art of spectacle, the discipline of formlessness. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how they did it. Welcome back to One Book Away. If you've been following our series on the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, you already know the foundations: how to protect yourself, manage your reputation, and navigate the social battlefield. You've learned the art of persuasion, the power of timing, and how to master your own image. But now we enter the final stretch, Laws 37 through 48. And let me tell you, this is where the book gets truly profound. These final laws deal with what Greene calls the end game of power. They address the questions that matter most once you've already climbed the ladder. How do you hold on to what you've gained? How do you avoid the traps that destroy the powerful? How do you navigate envy, manage victory, and, perhaps most important of all, how do you remain fluid and adaptable in a world that is constantly changing? Think about it. History is filled with people who rose to incredible heights, then fell spectacularly. Not because they lacked talent, not because their enemies were stronger, but because they didn't understand these final principles. They got rigid, they got arrogant, they pushed too far, and the world swallowed them whole. That's not going to be you. Not after today. So let's get into it. Law 37. Create compelling spectacles. Here's a question most people never ask themselves. Why do we remember certain leaders, certain moments, certain people, and forget thousands of others who were equally talented? The answer, more often than not, is spectacle. Greene opens this law with a fascinating story. In the early 1700s, word spread through Berlin of a mysterious figure known as the Moon Doctor. This man, a Dr. Weislider, claimed he could heal any illness using nothing but the rays of the moon. His patients would line up outside an enormous converted beer hall. Inside, silver moonlight poured through tall northern windows, casting everything in an eerie glow. Patients would wait for hours, climbing a stairway to the second floor, hearing shouts and cries of miraculous healing from above. When they finally reached the doctor, he would lift the afflicted body part toward the moonlight, mumble something mysterious, and send them on their way. And here's the remarkable thing. Many of them actually felt healed. Now, was it real medicine? Of course not. It was theater. Pure, carefully orchestrated theater. The long wait, the ascending stairway, the strange sounds, the silvery light, every element was designed to bypass the rational mind and strike straight at the emotions. By the time patients reached the doctor, they were already in a kind of trance. They had surrendered to the spectacle, and this is Greene's point. Words are dangerous instruments. They invite argument, skepticism, resistance, but images, striking, dramatic, larger-than-life images, bypass all of that. They hit us at an emotional, almost primal level. We don't argue with what we see. We feel it. Julius Caesar understood this better than almost anyone. From the moment he entered public life, he staged enormous spectacles, wild beast hunts, gladiator fights, theatrical contests that made him synonymous with excitement and grandeur. When he crossed the Rubicon, launching a civil war, he turned the moment into pure drama, pointing to a mysterious figure blowing a trumpet on the riverbank and declaring it a sign from the gods. His generals, uncertain about the war, were swept up in the theatricality of the moment. Even in death, Caesar was a showman. When the conspirators surrounded him with their daggers, he pulled his robe over his face and arranged the cloth so that his legs were covered, dying with dignity and dramatic flair. The lesson here is not about being flashy for its own sake. It's about understanding that in the realm of power, how you present something matters as much as the thing itself. The speech can be forgotten in minutes. A spectacle lives in the memory forever. Greene also tells us about Diane de Poitiers, mistress to the French King Henri II. Diane was not the most beautiful woman at court. By the time Henri became king, she was approaching 50, yet she maintained her hold on him for decades, not through physical beauty alone, but through an extraordinary mastery of symbolism. She identified herself with the Roman goddess Diana, goddess of the hunt and of chastity. She redesigned her entire castle to reflect this association, filling it with crescent moons, stags, hounds, and sculptures of the goddess that bore an uncanny resemblance to herself. The intertwined initials of her name and Henry's appeared on everything: buildings, robes, monuments. The effect was hypnotic. Henry didn't just see a woman, he saw a living goddess, a mythic figure who elevated his own image simply by being at his side. A cult of Diana sprang up across France. Poets wrote verses in her honor, and Henry remained devoted to her until the day he died. Here's the takeaway. Find an image, a symbol, a visual identity that captures what you want to project. Make it consistent, make it memorable, and let it do the work that words never can. In a world drowning in noise, the person who commands attention through spectacle and symbolism will always have the advantage. Law 38. Think as you like, but behave like others. In the 5th century BC, the Spartan nobleman Pausanias led a victorious Greek expedition against the Persian Empire. He was celebrated as a hero. But then something strange happened. Pausanias began styling his hair with perfumed oils, draping himself in flowing Persian garments, and surrounding himself with Egyptian bodyguards. He held lavish banquets in the Persian style, demanded to be entertained as a Persian lord, and openly mocked the simple Greek way of life. His soldiers, who had fought and bled alongside him, were bewildered and then disgusted. His superiors grew suspicious. Eventually, he was accused of treason, hunted down, and left to starve to death in a temple. What destroyed Pausanias was not his private love of Persian culture, it was his insistence on flaunting it publicly. By making a show of how different he was, how superior he considered foreign ways, he insulted everyone around him. He made his compatriots feel inferior, and people who feel inferior in your presence will find a way to bring you down. Greene's message in this law is both practical and profound. You are free to think whatever you want. Your mind is your own private kingdom, and no one can take that from you. But your outward behavior is a different matter entirely. In the social world, appearances govern everything. If you make a show of going against the grain, flaunting unconventional ideas, mocking traditions, setting yourself above the common crowd, people will not admire your courage. They will resent it. They will see it as arrogance, and they will punish you for it. Think about it. How many people have you met who constantly announce how different they are, who can't stop telling you about their unconventional views? It gets tiresome, doesn't it? Because underneath the rebellion, you sense something else, a need for attention, a desire to feel superior. The truly powerful operate differently. They blend in, they mouth the right words, they follow the expected rituals, and behind this comfortable mask, they think and plan exactly as they please. Their conformity is not weakness, it is a strategic choice that gives them the freedom to act without arousing suspicion or resistance. The philosopher Tommaso Campanella learned this the hard way. A radical thinker in Counter-Reformation Italy, he was imprisoned and tortured for his heretical ideas. But instead of dying a martyr, which would have accomplished nothing, he adapted. He feigned madness. He wrote books that appeared to support Catholic orthodoxy while subtly smuggling in his own ideas in the mouths of heretical characters he pretended to argue against. His sympathizers understood the game. The authorities were fooled, and Campanella survived. The lesson is clear. Never wage unnecessary wars against the beliefs and customs of your environment. Share your originality only with those who will appreciate it. With everyone else, wear the mask that the moment requires. As Greene puts it, In the land of the conformists, the wise person does not stand out but blends in, nurturing the common touch while preserving the freedom of an independent mind. Law 39. Stir up waters to catch fish. Have you ever been in a situation where someone pushed your buttons, and the moment you reacted, you realized you'd played right into their hands? This is one of the most important laws in the entire book, because it addresses something we all struggle with, our emotions. Specifically, the way anger and frustration can be weaponized against us, and how we can flip the script. In January of 1809, Napoleon rushed back to Paris after learning that his foreign minister, Talleyrand, had been conspiring against him. Napoleon was furious. He summoned his ministers, stormed into the room, and launched into a tirade directly at Talleyrand. He called him a coward, a traitor, a man of no faith. He screamed that Talleyrand deserved to be hanged. He even insulted the man's wife. And through all of this, every red-faced, bulging-eyed minute of it, Talleyrand simply leaned against the mantelpiece, looking bored, completely maddeningly calm. When Napoleon finally exhausted himself and stormed out, Talleyrand slowly crossed the room, moving with his characteristic limp. As an attendant helped him with his cloak, he turned to his fellow ministers and said, "What a pity, gentlemen, that so great a man should have such bad manners." That one sentence did more damage to Napoleon than any army could. Word spread instantly through Paris that the great emperor had lost control, that a subordinate had outmaneuvered him simply by refusing to react. From that day forward, people began to see Napoleon differently. As Talleyrand later said, "This is the beginning of the end," and it was. The tirade was a turning point. Napoleon's loss of composure revealed something his enemies had long suspected, that beneath the genius strategist was a man who could be rattled, who could be manipulated, who could be baited into mistakes. Greene's point here is devastating in its simplicity. An angry reaction is almost never powerful. It looks impulsive, childish, out of control. It reveals your weaknesses. It gives your opponents exactly what they wanted, proof that they've gotten under your skin. But here's the flip side, and this is where the real power lies. If you can control your own emotions while stirring up those of your opponents, you gain an enormous advantage. Make them angry while you stay calm, and they will make mistakes. They will overreact. They will reveal the very weaknesses they were trying to hide. The Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie used this principle masterfully. When a rebellious warlord named Ras Gugsa threatened his authority, Selassie didn't attack head-on. Instead, he provoked Gugsa, ordering him to fight a distant tribe he had no quarrel with, an order designed to wound his pride. Gugsa took the bait. He launched a holy war against Selassie, exactly as the emperor had planned. But Selassie had already secured the support of the church, bribed Gugsa's key allies, and positioned his forces perfectly. The rebellion collapsed almost immediately. By staying calm and strategic while his enemy raged, Selassie turned the situation entirely to his advantage. Gugsa's anger blinded him. Selassie's composure gave him clarity. Remember this: nothing in the social world is truly personal. People's anger almost always has roots that go far beyond you. When someone lashes out, don't take the bait. Step back, observe. Let their emotions work against them while your calm becomes your shield and your weapon. Law 40. Despise the free lunch. What is offered for free is usually the most expensive thing of all. This law might seem counterintuitive at first. Who doesn't love a bargain? Who doesn't want something for nothing? But Greene argues that in the world of power, the free lunch is one of the most dangerous traps you can fall into, and history is filled with people who learned this the hard way. Consider the legend of El Dorado. After the Spanish conquered the Incan Empire, gold fever swept through Europe. Adventurers by the thousands poured into South America, chasing rumors of a golden city where the streets were paved with precious metal. In 1541, Gonzalo Pizarro led the largest expedition yet. 340 Spaniards, 4,000 Indian porters, thousands of animals deep into the jungles of Ecuador. They marched for over a year. The rain rotted their gear. Mosquitoes devoured them, They ate their own dogs and horses. The Indians they tortured for information simply sent them farther into the jungle to get rid of them. In the end, barely 100 survivors staggered back, having marched 2,000 miles in an enormous circle and found absolutely nothing. The vast sums invested in the expedition were totally wasted, and it didn't stop there. For decades, expedition after expedition chased the phantom of El Dorado. The obsession with easy gold drained Spain's treasury, depopulated entire towns, and contributed directly to the decline of the Spanish Empire. A nation that had been the most powerful in Europe gradually destroyed itself, pursuing wealth that didn't exist. Think about it. The promise of sudden, effortless riches short-circuited the rational minds of otherwise intelligent people. They abandoned agriculture, neglected their armies, and chased mirages across a continent. The free lunch, the fantasy of wealth without work, was their undoing. Greene's message extends far beyond treasure hunting. In every area of life, what comes too easily or too cheaply carries hidden costs. The friend who offers favors without asking for anything creates an invisible debt. The bargain that seems too good to be true usually is. The business deal that promises fantastic returns with no risk is almost always a trap. The truly powerful understand that everything worth having has a price, and they are willing to pay it. They pay their own way to maintain their independence. They spend generously and strategically, knowing that money in circulation buys influence, loyalty, and freedom. They never let the lure of easy gains cloud their judgment. The Renaissance writer Pietro Aretino understood this brilliantly. When he arrived in Venice with modest savings, he didn't hoard his money. He threw open his doors, hosted lavish banquets, tipped generously, and gave freely to beggars and washerwomen. Word spread quickly. Here was a man of power and generosity. Artists, nobles, and visiting dignitaries flocked to his home. His open-handedness bought him something money alone never could: a reputation, a network, and eventually the patronage of the most powerful people in Europe. The lesson: be lavish with your resources when it serves a strategic purpose. Pay the full price for quality. Never cut corners with excellence. And above all, never let the fantasy of something for nothing lead you into a trap that costs you everything. Law 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. Every generation faces this challenge: the weight of the past, the shadow of a great predecessor, the expectations that come with following in someone else's footsteps. And more often than not, that shadow proves crushing. When Louis XIV died in 1715 after 55 glorious years on the French throne, the entire country turned its eyes to his successor, the 5-year-old Louis XV. The boy had the best tutors in France. He was groomed from infancy to continue the Sun King's legacy. But when he finally took power, something went wrong. Rather than building on his grandfather's achievements, Louis XV surrendered himself to pleasure. Gambling, mistresses, elaborate parties, these became his obsessions. The affairs of state bored him. He let his ministers and mistresses run the country while he chased amusement. And the result was catastrophic. France's debts soared. Its military weakened. The court that Louis XIV had turned into the envy of Europe became a playground for parasites. By the time Louis XV died, France was headed straight for revolution. His grandson Louis XVI inherited a country in crisis and eventually lost his head for it, literally. Why does this pattern repeat so often? Why do the children and successors of great leaders so frequently fail? Greene's answer is both simple and deep. When you inherit power, when you walk into a position created by someone else's effort and brilliance, you lack the one thing that made them great in the first place: necessity. The original leader built something from nothing. They were driven by hunger, ambition, a desperate need to prove themselves. Their successor feels none of that urgency, and without urgency, talent atrophies, energy dissipates, greatness fades. But there's a deeper problem too. When you follow a great predecessor, everything you do is measured against them. You are trapped in their shadow. Their methods become the standard, even when circumstances have completely changed. You end up imitating a past that no longer applies, rather than forging a path of your own. Alexander the Great understood this better than anyone in history. From childhood, he loathed his father, King Philip of Macedon. Not because Philip was weak, quite the opposite. Philip was a brilliant general and cunning politician, but Alexander saw that following in his father's footsteps would mean forever being compared to him. So he deliberately made himself the opposite, bolder, more reckless, more dramatic. When Philip hesitated, Alexander charged. When Philip used cunning, Alexander used audacity. The moment that captures this perfectly is Alexander taming the wild horse Bucephalus, a beast no one else could control. Where others saw a dangerous animal, Alexander saw an opportunity to outshine his father in front of the entire court. He rode that horse all the way to India. After Philip was murdered, Alexander didn't simply continue his father's work. He psychologically started from nothing. He cut the Gordian knot with a sword instead of trying to untie it, announcing to the world that he would do things his own way. He conquered Persia, marched into India, built an empire that dwarfed his father's, and did it all by refusing to walk in anyone else's shadow. The lesson for all of us is clear. Whether you're following a successful predecessor at work, living in the shadow of a famous parent, or simply building on your own past achievements, never let the past dictate your future. The world is constantly changing. What worked yesterday may be poison today. You must be willing to forge your own identity, find your own voice, and, metaphorically at least, slay the father figure that holds you back. Law 42. Strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. Within any group, any organization, any movement, any circle of friends, there is almost always one person who holds the whole thing together. One strong personality around whom the others orbit. Identify that person, neutralize them, and the entire structure falls apart. The ancient Athenians understood this instinctively. Their democracy had a unique institution called ostracism. Once a year, citizens would gather in the marketplace and write on a piece of pottery the name of the person they most wanted banished from the city for 10 years. If enough votes accumulated against one individual, that person was exiled immediately. This wasn't about punishing criminals. The Athenians used ostracism to remove personalities that threatened the social fabric, people who were too arrogant, too ambitious, too divisive. Aristides, a general so fair he was nicknamed the Just, was ostracized because citizens grew tired of hearing him called righteous. They feared his moral superiority would create resentment and division. The great general Themistocles was ostracized for the same reason. His constant boasting about his victories had become unbearable. The Athenians had grasped something essential about human nature. Trouble within a group can almost always be traced back to a single source. One unhappy, chronically dissatisfied person who stirs up discontent and infects everyone around them. Trying to reform such people, or arguing with them, or absorbing them into the group, rarely works. The most effective solution is the most direct: remove them entirely. Greene also tells the story of how Pope Boniface VIII destroyed the city of Florence's resistance without firing a single arrow. Florence was divided between two factions, the blacks and the whites. The one man holding the whites together, giving them courage and direction, was the great poet Dante Alighieri. Boniface didn't attack Florence directly. Instead, he lured Dante to Rome under the pretext of negotiations, then kept him there while his agents worked to divide and conquer the leaderless whites. Without their shepherd, the flock scattered, the whites collapsed, and Dante spent the rest of his life in exile. The principle applies everywhere. In business, in politics, in personal conflicts, don't waste your energy fighting a many-headed enemy. Find the one head that matters, the person with the charisma, the willpower, the ability to hold the group together. Isolate or neutralize that person, and everything else falls into place. But be careful. If you strike at the shepherd and fail, if they survive your attack, you've created a dangerous enemy who now knows your intentions. So when you act decisively and make sure your target cannot recover. Law 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others. Of all the laws in this book, this one might be the most important for everyday life, because it addresses the fundamental challenge that every person of power faces: how to get other people to willingly move in your direction. Coercion seems like the obvious answer. Force people to obey, threaten them, overpower them. But Greene argues that coercion is actually the weakest form of influence. It creates resentment, it hardens resistance. And the moment the coercive force is removed, people snap back to their original positions, or worse, they actively work against you. The story that best illustrates this law is one of the most remarkable in Chinese history. In the 3rd century AD, the brilliant strategist Zhuge Liang faced a dangerous situation. A barbarian king named Meng Huo was threatening his kingdom from the south, and Liang had to deal with this menace quickly before turning his attention to a more powerful enemy in the north. A wise man advised Liang not to rely on force. "It is better to win hearts than cities," he said. "Better to battle with hearts than with weapons." Liang agreed. This was exactly his philosophy. So when Liang captured Meng Huo's army, including the king himself, he did something extraordinary. Instead of executing his prisoners, he freed them. He removed their chains, fed them lavishly, and sent them home to their families. When Meng Huo himself was brought before him, Liang asked if he would yield. The king refused. He said he'd been tricked, not truly defeated, so Liang released him too. Over the following months, this astonishing pattern repeated itself. Liang captured Meng Huo a second time, released him, a third time, released him, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth time. Each time, Meng Huo's officers grew more dissatisfied. Liang had treated them with respect. They had lost their heart for fighting. But every time Zhuge Liang asked Meng Huo to yield, the great king would come up with another excuse. "You tricked me, I lost through bad luck." On and on. "If you capture me again," he would promise, "I swear I will not betray you." And so Liang would let him go. After the 7th capture, this time following a devastating battle in which Liang used fire to destroy an enemy army wearing flammable vine armor, Meng Huo finally broke. He fell to the ground weeping and pledged his eternal loyalty. And here's the remarkable part. Liang didn't leave an occupying force. He didn't install puppet rulers. He simply restored Meng Huo to his throne, returned his conquered lands, and marched north. He never had to come back. Meng Huo became his most devoted and unshakable ally for life. Think about what Liang accomplished. Through patience and repeated acts of mercy, he achieved something that military force never could: a genuine change of heart. He won not just obedience, but loyalty, not just submission, but love. The lesson extends to every area of life. When you need to move people in your direction, your first instinct might be to push, to argue, to assert your will. But this almost always triggers resistance. A far more powerful approach is to work on their emotions, understand their individual psychology, find out what they fear, what they desire, what makes them tick. Then tailor your approach to each person. Alternate harshness with mercy, create contrast, push people to the edge of despair, then offer relief. If they expect punishment and you give them kindness, the effect is devastating in the best possible way. You bypass their defenses and connect directly with their hearts. And once you've won someone's heart, you have something infinitely more valuable than their reluctant compliance. You have their willing devotion. Law 44, Disarm and Infuriate with the mirror effect. There are few tools more powerful or more psychologically disorienting than the mirror. Greene identifies 4 distinct mirror effects, each with its own strategic application. But the core principle beneath all of them is the same. When you mirror other people, reflecting back their behavior, their desires, their values, you gain an almost hypnotic power over them. Consider Joseph Fouché, Napoleon's Minister of Police. For years, Napoleon tried to figure Fouché out, but the man was impossible to pin down. He changed colors like a chameleon, radical Jacobin one year, moderate Republican the next, committed imperialist the year after that. Whatever Napoleon did, Fouché mirrored. Whatever the emperor's spies reported, Fouché had spies watching those spies. When Napoleon tried to trap Fouché in a conspiracy, the minister simply reflected the trap back at him. He arranged things so that his own agents appeared to be loyal double agents working for Napoleon. The emperor could never get a clear picture of what Fouché was really doing, because all he ever saw was his own strategy reflected back at him. This is the neutralizing mirror. By mimicking the moves of those above you, you create a perfect shield. Your opponents can't see your strategy because all they see is their own. Behind this screen, you're free to plan and maneuver without interference. Then there's the Narcissus effect, perhaps the most seductive mirror of all. Alcibiades, the brilliant and infamous Athenian politician, mastered this art. Whenever he met someone new, he would study them intently, then reflect back their deepest values and desires. With the philosopher Socrates, he became a model of virtue and simplicity. With the luxury-loving Persians, he became the most extravagant host in the land. With the austere Spartans, he bathed in cold water and ate black broth. Everyone who met Alcibiades felt they were looking into a mirror that showed them a more magnificent version of themselves. This is irresistibly seductive, because we are all in love with ourselves, and nothing is more flattering than having someone reflect our best qualities back to us. But use this mirror too freely, as Alcibiades did, and the spell breaks. People eventually feel used. The trick is subtlety and discretion. Mirror selectively. Reflect only the most important desires of the people who matter most to your plans. Greene also describes the moral mirror, teaching someone a lesson by giving them a taste of their own medicine. When Ivan the Terrible grew frustrated with the Russian people's endless complaints and disrespect, he didn't lecture them. He abdicated the throne and placed a Tartar general in his seat, a ridiculous puppet ruler who dressed like Ivan but had no real power. For 2 agonizing years, the Russian people experienced what life was like without a real czar. By the time they begged Ivan to return, they had learned their lesson. They granted him absolute power and never challenged him again. The mirror is a tool of immense versatility. You can use it to shield your actions, seduce your targets, teach your enemies a lesson, or deceive them with perfect copies of reality. But remember, like all powerful tools, it must be wielded with care. If people see through the mirror, if they catch you in the act of manipulation, the spell reverses instantly. What was charming becomes sinister. What was seductive becomes repulsive. The art lies in making the reflection seem effortless and natural, so that no one suspects a mirror is involved at all. Law 45. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once. Everyone agrees that change is necessary. In the abstract, we all want progress, innovation, improvement. But in practice, in our day-to-day lives, we are creatures of deep habit. We cling to the familiar. We resist disruption, and when someone forces too much change too quickly, we don't thank them for it. We rebel. Thomas Cromwell discovered this the hard way. As the power behind King Henry VIII's throne, Cromwell engineered one of the most dramatic transformations in English history, the break with Rome and the creation of the Church of England. He dissolved hundreds of monasteries, seized their vast wealth, and imposed Protestantism on a country that had been Catholic for 1,000 years. The speed of these reforms was breathtaking. Churches were demolished, stained glass windows smashed, treasured religious artifacts destroyed. Monks who had spent their lives in quiet service were thrown into the streets. The poor, who had depended on monasteries for food and shelter, suddenly had nowhere to turn. The backlash was ferocious. Powerful revolts erupted across northern England. The king himself began to regret the changes, and when Cromwell compounded his errors by arranging a disastrous marriage between Henry and the unattractive Anne of Cleves, his fate was sealed. He was arrested, charged with heresy, and beheaded before a cheering crowd. Cromwell's mistake was not in wanting change. His reforms were arguably necessary. His mistake was in moving too fast, too openly, and too brutally. He tore away the comforting structures of the past without giving people anything to replace them with. He created a void, and people fear nothing more than a void. They associate it with chaos and death. Compare Cromwell's approach with that of Mao Zedong, who faced an even greater challenge, transforming the most tradition-bound civilization on Earth. Mao understood that Chinese culture was inseparable from its past. Confucius still shaped how people thought and felt 2,000 years after his death. To directly attack the past would have been suicidal. So Mao did something brilliant. He cloaked his revolution in the clothing of the past. He presented his communist army as an extension of the beloved outlaws from the classic novel The Water Margin. He cast himself not as a Chinese Lenin but as a modern version of Zhuge Liang, the legendary warrior-philosopher. He associated his regime with the great unifying Emperor Qin, reinterpreting this historical figure to justify his own bold actions. The effect was powerful. By wrapping radical change in familiar packaging, Mao made the revolution feel like a natural continuation of Chinese history rather than a rupture from it. People could accept the new because it felt connected to the old. The lesson for all of us: when you need to make changes, do not advertise them as radical departures. Make them feel like gentle improvements on the past. Borrow the language, the symbols, and the rituals of tradition, even as you reshape everything beneath the surface. Respect the human need for continuity, and your reforms will meet far less resistance. Law 46. Never appear too perfect. Here's a truth that most people learn too late, if they learn it at all. Being envied is one of the most dangerous positions you can occupy, and the fastest way to trigger envy is to appear as if you have no flaws. The playwright Joe Orton was riding an incredible wave of success in 1960s London. His sharp, wicked farces were the toast of the West End. He was young, handsome, charming, and suddenly famous. Everything was going spectacularly right. Meanwhile, his partner Kenneth Halliwell, the man who had supported Orton for years, who had been his mentor and collaborator, was slowly falling apart. Halliwell had no career of his own. He was balding, awkward, and increasingly invisible at parties where Orton was the center of attention. Envy aided him like acid. Orton saw the problem but didn't know how to fix it. He tried to help Halliwell launch an art career, but this only made things worse. It felt like charity, confirming Halliwell's sense of inferiority. In August of 1967, Halliwell bludgeoned Orton to death with a hammer and then killed himself. It's a horrifying story, and Greene uses it to illuminate something most people refuse to acknowledge. Envy is one of the most powerful and destructive emotions in human nature, and unlike anger or jealousy, envy is almost never expressed openly. No one admits to feeling it. It festers underground, disguised as criticism, as moral disapproval, as helpful advice that somehow always undermines you. Think about it. When someone around you succeeds, do you feel a twinge of something uncomfortable? A subtle wish that they'd fail, just a little? Most of us have felt this, even if we'd never admit it. Now imagine being on the receiving end of that emotion, multiplied across dozens or hundreds of people. That is the reality of success. Greene's solution is not to suppress your abilities, but to manage how they are perceived. Cosimo de' Medici, founder of one of history's most powerful dynasties, was a master at this. Despite controlling Florence's politics and finances for 30 years, he dressed simply, walked with one servant, and rode a mule instead of a horse. He built himself a modest palace and gave lavishly to public works. He never flaunted his power. He never made anyone feel inferior. And because he deflected envy so skillfully, he died peacefully in his bed after 3 decades of unchallenged rule. The takeaway is clear. Occasionally display a weakness. Admit to a harmless vice. Attribute your success to luck rather than genius. Give people something to feel good about in your presence, a sense that you are human, like them, and that your success could be theirs too. You lose nothing by this, but you gain enormously because you take the teeth out of envy before it has a chance to bite. Law 47. Do not go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, learn when to stop. The moment of victory is often the moment of greatest danger. Cyrus the Great built one of the largest empires the ancient world had ever seen. He defeated the Medes, conquered Lydia, crushed Babylon. He was called the king of the world, and his confidence grew with every victory. Then he turned his attention to the Massagetae, a fierce warrior people on the Caspian Sea, led by Queen Tamiris. Tomarus warned him, "King of the Medes, I advise you to abandon this enterprise, rule your own people, and try to bear the sight of me ruling mine." Cyrus ignored her. He advanced into Massageta territory, used a trick to defeat a portion of their army, and captured the queen's son. Tomarus sent another message. "Give me back my son and leave my country. If you refuse, I swear by the sun to give you more blood than you can drink." Cyrus scoffed. Her son, unable to bear captivity, killed himself, and Tamiris, consumed with fury, unleashed her full army against the Persians. The battle was devastating. The Massagetae annihilated the Persian forces. Cyrus himself was killed. Tamiaris found his body on the battlefield, cut off his head, and plunged it into a wineskin filled with human blood. "You have your fill of blood," she said. After a lifetime of brilliant victories, Cyrus destroyed himself with one unnecessary war. He had nothing to gain from attacking the Massagetae. They had no great wealth, no strategic territory he needed, but victory had become a kind of drug. Each conquest fed a hunger for the next, and that hunger led him past the mark he should have aimed for, straight into catastrophe. Now consider the opposite approach. Madame de Pompadour, mistress to Louis XV, faced a challenge that had defeated every royal mistress before her: age. As she grew older and could no longer satisfy the king physically, the normal course of events would have been for her to be replaced by a younger, more beautiful rival. But Pompadour was too smart for that. Instead of clinging desperately to a role she could no longer fill, she stepped back. She encouraged the king to take young lovers at a private establishment on the palace grounds. She knew these girls posed no political threat. They had none of her intelligence, her connections, or her charm. By giving up the battle she couldn't win, Pompadour preserved the war. She remained the most powerful woman in France for 20 years, an unprecedented achievement. She knew the most important thing any person of power can know: when to stop. The lesson here applies to every area of life. After a victory, whether in business, in a relationship, in a creative project, there is an overwhelming temptation to push for more, to keep the momentum going, to strike while the iron is hot. But this is precisely when you are most vulnerable, because success breeds arrogance, arrogance breeds carelessness, and carelessness breeds disaster. Set a goal, achieve it, then stop. Resist the intoxication of triumph. Consolidate what you've gained. And remember, as the Japanese samurai saying goes, when you have won a victory, tighten the strings of your helmet. Law 48. Assume formlessness. And now we arrive at the final law, the capstone of everything Robert Greene has taught us. In many ways, this is the most profound lesson in the entire book. For centuries, Sparta was the most feared military power in Greece. Its soldiers were trained from childhood in the art of war. They fought in tight phalanxes that could crush armies many times their size. Their discipline was legendary, their lifestyle austere. They had created a perfect military machine, but that perfection was also their prison. Spartan society was so rigid, so resistant to change, that it could not adapt when the world shifted around it. After defeating Athens in the Peloponnesian War, Sparta suddenly found itself managing an empire, something it had never prepared for. Athenian money flowed in, corrupting soldiers who had been taught nothing about economics or politics. Governors sent to rule distant lands succumbed to temptation, and when a powerful enemy finally tested Sparta's rigid formations, the system cracked. Within a generation of its greatest victory, Sparta collapsed and never recovered. Meanwhile, Athens, the defeated party, adapted. It transformed itself from a military empire into a cultural and economic powerhouse. It changed shape, like water finding a new path around an obstacle. Athens thrived for centuries after Sparta vanished from the stage. This is the essential paradox of power. Rigidity looks like strength but is actually weakness. Flexibility looks like weakness but is actually the deepest kind of strength. The form you give your life, your strategy, your character may protect you for a while, but eventually, that form becomes a cage. The world changes, your enemies adapt, and if you cannot change with them, you become a target. Mao Zedong understood this perfectly. When his communist forces faced the vastly superior nationalist army in the Chinese Civil War, he didn't fight a conventional war. His troops dispersed across the countryside like mercury, never staying in one place, never offering a target. They harassed and ambushed, appeared and disappeared. The nationalists couldn't figure out what Mao was doing because there was nothing fixed to analyze. It was a strategy drawn from the ancient Chinese game of Go, a game where the goal is not to attack directly but to spread out, surround, and gradually suffocate your opponent. By assuming formlessness, by refusing to commit to any fixed position, Mao turned the nationalists' strength against them. Their massive, well-equipped armies became slow, unwieldy targets, sitting ducks for encirclement. And this brings us to the deepest truth of the final law. The powerful are not those who build the biggest fortress or the strongest army. The powerful are those who can change shape, who can adapt to any situation, who give their enemies nothing solid to attack. Be like water, Greene tells us. Water has no shape of its own. It takes the shape of whatever container it flows into. It can be gentle or overwhelming. It can wear away stone. It cannot be grasped, and it cannot be stopped. This is the ultimate form of power. Not a rigid structure, but a fluid intelligence that responds to every situation with fresh eyes and an open mind. And this doesn't just apply to strategy, it applies to your identity, your habits, your way of thinking. The older we get, the more likely we are to calcify, to repeat the same patterns, to cling to the same ideas, to resist anything new. This is the beginning of death. The powerful remain alive by staying in motion, by constantly reinventing themselves, by refusing to let any form, no matter how successful, become permanent. And there you have it, the final 12 laws of power. Let's bring it all together with the key takeaways from part 4. First, use spectacle and symbolism to communicate what words cannot. Images bypass resistance and strike straight at the heart. Second, think freely, but conform outwardly. Your private mind is your kingdom. Your public behavior should be a strategic mask. Third, master your emotions and use them as weapons against those who cannot control theirs. The calm person always wins. Fourth, everything has a price. Pay it willingly. The free lunch is always the most expensive meal. Fifth, never live in someone else's shadow. Forge your own identity and refuse to be defined by the past. Sixth, in any group, find the person who holds it together. Neutralize them, and the rest falls apart. Seventh, win hearts, not just battles. Genuine loyalty cannot be coerced, it must be earned. Eighth, use the mirror to seduce, shield, and teach. Reflect the world back at itself, and you gain invisible power. Ninth, when you reform, disguise the change. Respect the human need for continuity. 10th, never appear flawless. Deflect envy before it grows into something dangerous. 11th, in victory, know when to stop. Arrogance after triumph is the surest path to destruction. And finally, the most important lesson of all, assume formlessness. Stay fluid, stay adaptable, give your enemies nothing to attack, and never ever stop evolving. This is the end of our journey through the 48 laws of power. 48 timeless principles drawn from 3,000 years of human history. And whether you choose to use them offensively or defensively, whether you see them as a playbook or a field guide for self-protection, one thing is certain: after absorbing these lessons, you will never look at the world the same way again. Take a moment to reflect on everything we've covered. Which law hit you the hardest? Which one made you rethink a relationship, a strategy, a mistake from your past? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear which of these final 12 laws resonated with you most. If you want to read the full book, and I truly believe everyone should, I've put links to get it on Amazon and listen free on Audible in the description below. And if you haven't already, make sure you go back and watch parts 1, 2, and 3 of this series. Each part builds on the last, and together they form the complete picture of Robert Greene's masterwork. Thank you for being here. Thank you for investing your time in ideas that can genuinely change your life. And as always, remember, you are just one book away.